Hello, everybody, G My family. This is part two of my part one earlier, an hour ago. So I'm back on here again. I don't know, screaming or just going live, letting y'all see what's going on on Capitol Hill of Washington. With all the senators and stuff fighting for our rights, telling Trump stay off our, stay out our, stay out our pockets. Leave our money and Medicaid and everything alone. Hello. So I'll let y'all see this. Enjoy and listen. Trunk and much got to go, y'all. And all that chromies need a gut.
But that is Stony, the road we trod, bitter the chastening rod. I mean, we have come through the way of the tears, the tears have been watered. I mean, this has been a hard path, and you have seen hardship and pain. And church was a place where we came together with our brokenness, and found healing, but found strength in the broken places too.
Hands off. That's right, hands off.
Yes. And so you've been fighting.
Trunk and much got to go.
Why did you choose the profession that you so nobly represent? Right. And where do you think it came from? So you preached to your sister and John Lewis preached to the chickens. together. But it's also in so many. But it's also a training ground, right? Like for future leaders. I mean, the church, you get a constant demonstration. And I've listened to all of you speak. And I'm sorry, I hear echoes of pastors preaching. We all seem to be pulling from a rhetorical style. That's right. We were taught. They were preaching without a license. All of it. Yeah. Okay, so we started here 2 hours ago, and before the sun came up, Hakeem and I sat down, and we wanted to. It was cold, y'all. It was cold, colder than it is now. But we wanted to invite people in conversation. We get some more people in the plaza. We appreciate that. We are asking people to direct message their stories, their faith stories, they're concerned about this moral urgency, how this bill that we're talking about might impact them. Because Congress is coming back from a long 2-week break. Tomorrow we start again. The Republican leader has said that they are going to try to get this done this work period, which means kicking the bill over to the Senate. The bill, we already know because of their assignment to various committees, that they have to cut $880 billion. This is the assignment, and I'm not on your turf right now, the assignment to cut $180 billion, and we know the only way to do that really is to attack programs.
No, that's exactly right. I mean, so the budget bill sets forth all of these cuts that various committees have to make. And the $880 billion cut was assigned to the Energy and Commerce Committee. Now, the Energy and Commerce Committee has jurisdiction over Medicaid. And so every independent observer understands, despite the Republicans trying to run away from this fact, that if you say to the Energy and Commerce Committee that you've got to cut $880 billion, that means Medicaid. That's the only way to do it. And in fact, independent agencies, including Congressional Budget Office, have affirmed that reality. So now that we're entering into the committee process, it's going to be much harder for House Republicans to run away from this fact that they are trying to visit upon the American people the largest Medicaid cut in American history, which will be devastating.
And so this is where I want to get it to you, because I always wondered, and maybe you all know this in Maryland and New York, we say to a kid, the school's going to provide you a book. It's going to provide you a desk. These are essential to learning. But one thing we don't talk about is how essential nutrition is to learning. Yeah. Having access to food, access to school, to lunch, to eat during it. And there's been so much evidence that shows you if you don't have proper nutrition, you can't learn and absorb. And so when we're talking about on that chopping block, includes things like SNAP, includes things like they've already cut school lunch programs. They've already gone after. And this is what gets me kind of angry, as one of the voices in the Senate is loud about things that sort of overlap a little bit with Robert Kennedy about this idea of healthy foods, access to nutritious foods. Why do we subsidize the highly processed stuff and make it harder to achieve healthy fruits and vegetables? So don't tell me you believe in MAHA, Make America Healthy Again, and then cut the funding that gets people access to the healthy, fresh food. So you're a teacher. I'm out of my depth when I talk about the House side. I'm way out of my depth when I talk in your universe. But can you talk a little bit about this absurdity of a nation that is going to send kids out to a globally competitive, knowledge-based environment and is not doing the things to make the soil nurturing for them to actually learn?
So, yes, but I want to go back to Medicaid for just a minute, because it's all connected. You know that the majority of our kids in our schools get their health care from Medicaid? There are people who don't know that. So let's start there. The kids don't have the access to health care, so we know they can't learn. So now let's go on to the meals. We worked so hard in the last administration to get elected leaders to understand that it wasn't only about making sure that we provided meals, but it was healthy meals. And so we trained educators on how to do scratch cooking. It was an incredible success. Now, some people don't, when they hear that term, they don't know what that means. But my mom actually was the head cook at the Head Start Center in one of the Head Start Centers in Philly.
Really?
Yes, yes. And she could do so. Let me tell you, my mother, what she could do with government issued cheese would make you want to slap your mother. Not mine. But I'm telling you, all of the people, all the administrators downtown Philly would find their way to my mom's Head Start Center that day before Thanksgiving, because I'm telling you, we knew from
Philly? Is that where you grew up?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
No doubt.
You have to say it again, go Birds.
A lot of Philly fans out there.
Go Birds. Come
Go
on
Birds,
now.
yeah.
Don't make me start saying the chant.
He does.
Okay. See, but we knew from a young age. We saw the little kids, right? It was the only meal they would get. That was the meal they would get. And from
You had to tell me once or twice. I'm an Eagle fan. Eagles all the way. We won the champ.
Eating half of their lunch. And everyone saw the light
Y'all
shining.
should know. Y'all should be in my hat and stuff
When
on.
we would set up stations in parking lots and everything. And it wasn't just the kids coming. It was parents coming. It was whole families coming. So we understand how important school meals are to them. And I, when I saw that, all I could say, and this is what I keep saying, who doesn't want to feed the babies? Who doesn't want to feed the babies? Who doesn't want to do that? We know, and that's why I've been saying to folks, follow the money. You need to follow the money, because that'll tell you what you value. And when you're telling me you're not going to feed the children, we know what you do and you don't value. We know they can't learn if their stomachs are growling. And you don't need to make a case. You don't need a case study for that. Everybody knows that. You can't focus when you're hungry. Our kids absolutely need the federal government doing its part to make sure they have everything they need to learn. And being fed, being healthy, all of that makes a difference in whether or not they are ready to learn every day.
And by the way, the why, I just keep wanting to reinforce the why. This bill that's being put through to my senator and my congressperson is going to achieve the benefits for who? They're cutting from this, but what are they
For the billionaires.
Yeah. It's a GOP tax scam. And it's based off of what they previously did in 2017, where they actually moved the bill through the House and the Senate. Donald Trump signs it into law during the previous administration, where they set in motion legislation where 83% of the benefits would go to the wealthiest 1%. And now they're doubling and tripling down on that approach.
83% of the benefits
That's right.
of the last Donald Trump tax plan went to the wealthiest 1%, you said?
Set in motion, those benefits going to the wealthiest 1% over that 10-year window of the bill.
Right.
And that was reckless. It did nothing to actually help everyday Americans. And what's interesting is that you've got Elon Musk talking about Social Security being a Ponzi scheme. No, Project 2025 is a Ponzi scheme. Because you spent, President and others on the other side of the aisle, spent all of last year saying that they were going to lower the high cost of living for everyday Americans.
Yeah, right. Wasn't that the...
Because we do need to build an affordable economy. That's what the four of us are committed to doing. And housing costs and child care costs and grocery costs, they're all too high. But all you do is promise that costs are going to go down, including saying it's going to drop on day one.
Right.
Yeah.
And then lie about Project 2025 as if it doesn't exist. And now here's the Ponzi scheme. You spent all of this year implementing Project 2025, assaulting the economy, assaulting democracy, assaulting the rule of law, assaulting our veterans, and have done nothing to lower the high cost of living. And now you're doubling and tripling down on that extreme approach by trying to jam this budget down the throats of the American people.
Yeah, and nothing we've seen so far addresses the promise that was made, like you said. I mean, nothing about it has anything to do with working class people. It has nothing to do with how to help middle class families. None of it. Absolutely. We haven't seen any evidence whatsoever that there's any care or concern about bringing down the cost of living for everyday hardworking people. And you know what? And the question that people are asking, and we should just go ahead and answer, is do we have an obligation to care about the people we're talking about? Should we care about veterans? Absolutely. We know that our veterans, when we think about, for example, the people who have been fired in this federal government. A third of them are veterans who work in the federal government. When we think about whether or not our children can eat, whether or not we have benefits for our seniors who work for them. Social Security is not a give me. It's something that they worked for. They earned it. Again, we talked about Medicaid, about our children. Over 40% of the people on Medicaid are children. And the question is whether or not we are bound to care. We absolutely are bound to care. And you know what? And don't take just our faith. Go to almost any faith. Doesn't it teach that? I think about Hakeem Prince. The last voice you heard at the March on Washington before Dr. King spoke at the March on Washington was a rabbi. And he said the most profound thing when he said, God created us as each other's neighbors. But the concept of neighbor is not a geographic term, it's a moral one. And so that you have a moral obligation to care about how other people fare, not just these billionaires, and it's antithetical to everything that we believe as Americans. We believe that all of us have a God-given right to the fruits of this country. But, and so who should we care? We absolutely must care. It's Hakeem Prince who said we're each other's neighbors. But I think about the great Malik Aziz, who is the chief of police here in Prince George's County, who said also that there's no us against them. There's only us, And so in this moment, when we're asking, whether we should care, we absolutely must care.
Let me read you from that speech. This is Rabbi Prince.
Yes.
He talked about it. He said, when I was a rabbi of the Jewish community in Berlin, under the Hitler regime, I learned many things. The most important thing I learned under those tragic circumstances was that bigotry and hatred are not the most urgent problem. The most urgent problem is silence.
Yes.
A great people which had created a great civilization has become a nation of silent onlookers. They remain silent in the face of hate, in the face of brutality. America must not remain silent. Not merely Black America, but all of America. It must speak up and act for the president down to the humblest of us. For the sake of the Black community, but not just the Black community, but for the sake of the image, the dream, the idea, the aspiration of America itself.
Yes.
I mean, that is right now, in many ways, we got to talk about the call that we're making. Because right now, the four of us, the leader of the minority in the House, the senator from Maryland, the head of the NEA, the largest group of teachers, public school teachers in America, and public school professionals, and the senator from New Jersey, this is not enough. At the end of the day, we've got to get more people involved and understand the threat to our children and the urgency to act, because they have power, but the power of the people is greater than the people in power, but we got to use
Y'all
that
hear
power,
that,
right?
peeps?
We absolutely do, and Angela, we are having a conversation.
Yes.
Madam Senator.
Angela, yes, we're on first name basis this morning.
When you were sharing that, we all can quote scriptures from the Bible, and the one that I thought about, that just the very end, the greatest of these is love.
Yep.
The greatest of these is love. Dr. King talked a lot about that throughout his entire life, and we understand that if we love, then we will do what's right. And all of us have that opportunity. For us as educators, we understand that in this moment, at this time, our role is not only to teach the children, our role actually is to educate folks on what a democracy is and what you have to do to protect the democracy. This is the greatest assault on public education that we've ever seen in this country.
Yeah.
The dismantling of the Department of Education, all of what's happening, taking the money, that's already happening, and students are already suffering. So
Go back, you better go on your room.
and higher ed,
You can't
all
teach
of it, the freedom to teach, the freedom to learn. We need to understand, and we take seriously our responsibility to teach people what is happening right now, because that's the first step in an authoritarian reign, is to take away the right for society to be informed, for them to make critical decisions and collaborate in the problem solving. That's what's happening right now as they are taking more and more funds from our public schools. But make no mistake,
That part.
as educators, we also understand how important it is to tell real stories about real kids in real schools, and that's exactly what we're going to do. We want everyone to join us May 1st. We're going to be here in D.C. and all over this country and around the world.
That's May 1st.
Lift them up all May 1st, May Day, May Day. May Day. Workers, to your point, workers around the country are going to be standing up and demanding dignity and respect.
Okay, before you leave me, I want to say she's got to get a plane. This is the second person coming here that changed their travel plans to come and be here on these steps to sit in with us for a little while. We hope more people will come actually and sit in or be at home. Turn this on, listen to it while you're going about your day. Keep checking in. But I just want to ask you one question before you go.
Yes.
Because we just sang a little bit, but she originated the hymn that we sang a little while ago. Do you have a favorite song that you or artist that you play when you need some righteous inspiration? Or at least not your favorite. I don't want to put that, make you name the top. Just somebody that you lean on.
Somebody, I mean,
Or some
song.
Yeah, what is it?
Song, a hymn. Oh my goodness. Blessed assurance.
Blessed, there you go.
Insurance, yeah.
Blessed
What a
assurance.
foretaste of.
Blessed assurance. And you know, I know we got this.
Yes.
Together we got this, and I know we have it because our students, our babies, are depending on us to be worthy of them.
So I'm opening my wallet because this I was given to me years ago. It's all wrinkled, but when you said "feel no ways tired," this is one of my favorite Bible verses. But they that wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength.
Yes.
They shall mount up with wings as eagles. They shall run and not be weary, and they shall walk and not faint. As you fly off,
Isaiah.
I'm going to send you, Isaiah, I want you to mount up with wings and fly safely. May God give you traveling mercies, and may you stay strong in the fight. You inspire me. You give me strength. You're one of those voices out in America that every time I see you, I hear you, I get more steel in my resolve.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
all.
Thank you so
for
much.
our
Yeah,
kids.
thank you.
I know you won't stop
We won't.
because we won't let you.
All right.
Yeah, we will
Just
not.
saying.
We
I
will
did
not
say I
let
was from Philly, right?
Yeah.
Well, thank you.
Travel
When I keep it up,
safely.
did I bring anything?
Travel safely. Be careful on these stairs. Be careful on the stairs.
Yes, I will take
Here,
it.
you want the microphone?
Yeah, I want my mic back.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
Yeah. I have one other thing I tell you before I go to church here.
All right.
You travel safely, my sister. Yeah.
Yes, I know.
All right, we got one last thing I want to just
Hold right there, because we want to bring in somebody into this conversation. As you tell us this last thing, we've been joined by a member of the House. We got to even this.
Yeah,
out.
we got to.
yeah.
He's a good friend, the congressman from the great state of
Indiana.
My man.
All right, good morning.
Happy birthday, Doppelganger.
Thank you.
Yes, indeed.
I'm his stunt double, folks.
That's right.
When things get rough in Indiana,
Yeah.
he taps me in.
Absolutely.
I call
morning.
me Andre. I know you
I'm
have
going
no
to go on the
church.
church. Before I do, can I just share one other thing? I don't know, have you all ever read something that I thought about when we think about like why we are even in this moment and the greatest threat I think we face right now? There is a poem called "The Cold Within."
The cold.
The
within.
cold within.
I don't know that.
It is so profound and so relevant in this moment. And it essentially talks about these 6 people who are around a fire. And they're in a perilous condition.
Okay.
Really threatened, really their lives are at risk because they're all going to freeze outside. And they each have something that is critical to the other's survival. They have an ember they can throw in this fire. But they look around, they're so skeptical of each other in the moment.
Yeah.
There's a
they might go down there because he won't get
selfishness
stuck.
there. And in the end, if you have a chance to go and read it, it is something that will really stir you right now. And what it says is in the end, they each have this log, and it says essentially they don't die because of the cold without. They die because of the cold within.
Wow.
That's good.
And the hardening of the heart right now. And it is the most profound
They
message.
don't die because of the cold outside,
So good.
but the cold they have in their hearts that they're not
Yes.
sharing and building the fire.
Yeah, and it is, and it's I wish I could remember it, but if you have the chance to go look at it, I think it's what we have to remind people in this moment. That is what our country cannot risk.
That's right.
I think of everything we discuss right now, it is the cold that is developing within. An indifference to the suffering of others, an indifference to the condition of others, no matter what that condition is. Because remember, we're talking now about these tax breaks and talking about taking away from the poor. But it is still, if we allow ourselves as a country to become so hardened to each other,
Yes.
I think that's what we cannot survive. So, but I want to say thank you so much to our leader and senator and Mr. Congressman. Thank you all so much for being out here. We're going to pray our way.
Well, what would you lead us in a prayer before you leave?
Oh, I would love to. Oh, Heavenly Father, we thank you, God. We thank you, Lord. We trust you, God. You are our resurrected and reigning Redeemer, God. And we just thank you, God, for your power. We thank you for your grace. We thank you, Lord, for just opening up another day to all of us. We ask, God, right now that you would be with us in our country. God, that you would not only bless every person in our country, but you bless those who lead. God, that you would just turn the hearts, God, of every leader right now and incline us toward you. Incline us, Lord, to the message that you gave us so many years ago, God, that you remind us, Lord, that they will know us, God, by our love. We believe it, Lord. We believe, God, that we are called to care not just for those who are around us, but to care for those who we don't yet know. God, the Macedonia call for justice that you spoke about, God, that talked about caring not only for those who love you, but for those who hate you, God. We call upon you, God, we just ask you to give us that kind of courage right now. And so we ask, God, that you would bless us as we continue to move forward, to give us the wisdom and the courage, Lord, to make the right decisions, to care for those who are poor and suffering, to care, God, for those who are rich and lonely. God, that you would just help us, Lord, as a country, to be all that you have called us to be, Lord, to stand, Lord, as the leader across the world, God, as an example of your love, God. And so we just pray, Lord, for all of our leaders right now, God. We believe in you. We know, God, that there is nothing too hard for you, that you, God, can do anything but fail. And so we just put it all in your hands, all in your hands. We know, Lord, that you have the final say, God, and we believe, Lord, that in all of these circumstances, God, that you are going to win, that you will prevail, Lord. If not in this moment, we know, God, that it is coming. And so we ask, God, that you would comfort those who are afraid right now. Comfort those who have lost their jobs and who are wondering, God, how they will put food on the table. Comfort those, God, who are in nursing homes, who are wondering right now, God, how these Medicaid cuts will affect them. Protect our veterans, Lord, that you would continue to provide for them. And for all of those who are afraid in this moment, who are angry, God, we ask that you would just be with us, Lord. We know it, that all of these things we ask in your name. Amen.
Amen. Amen.
Oh,
Yes. Yes.
all right. I love you all. Thank you so much for being out here.
Thank you.
Yep. Thank you for being out here.
Thank you.
So much.
Give our best to everybody.
All right.
Enjoy the word. All right now.
All right. You're surrounded by the big, bold, and bald.
I won't add the other B, but yes.
There you go. Andre Carson in the building.
I'm happy to be with my brother. This is a boy band right here. I think
we see that. I'll be sure.
Look, I'll be bring the 80s back. All right, my man Al B. Bless you.
Now, this is one of my closest friends,
No doubt.
in the Congress. So I want you to tell your story. And we've been talking about the different faith traditions, those that stem from Abraham, of course,
Sure.
Jewish faith tradition, the Christian faith tradition, the Muslim faith tradition. You were the second Muslim American ever elected to the United States Congress, our good brother.
You're the
Ellison.
second. After brother Keith Ellison, yeah.
Attorney General Keith Ellison, before he served as AG, of course, he was elected to Congress. I think maybe came to Congress maybe about 2 or 4 years before you got here.
Probably a year and a half. We're classmates, actually.
Okay.
Yeah.
So tell us your story.
Well, I was born in Indianapolis. My wonderful mother, educated, brilliant, like my best friend, she unfortunately suffered from schizophrenia.
And can you guys hold on? If people want to sit on the steps here,
Yeah.
I feel like don't be shy.
It's
You
a
can't hear.
neighborhood.
Andre Carson's got a great story. I just don't know how the wind is affecting people's ability to hear this. Yeah, we're gonna turn on the speakers.
Come
soon.
closer. Come closer.
Come closer
That's okay.
if you want to hear. I see Maya Wireless.
Oh, hey, Professor, come on in here.
No, that's okay. Come sit with us and listen closer.
Come on.
You can get up on these steps. Come on, stand board over us. Maya.
That's right.
We know you believe in hierarchy.
No. Spice it up.
All right. And come on up. Come on up. We're gonna have all faiths represented now.
I love it. Good to
Come
see
sit
you.
on the top tier. Hey, Randy, you have a real job. Get up here on the higher.
How are you?
I'm good now.
How
Good to
are
see
you, my dear?
I'll get up for the hug.
Oh, how are you?
Thank God.
Good.
Come on, sit next to Maya. We're here, Andre. Andre, bring it in.
This is good.
Yes.
I love it.
Mint.
Yeah.
I see more people showing up. This is great. Feel free to come
Yeah.
closer, everybody. If you want to hear.
Come closer.
Yeah, come closer. Okay, so guys, Andre, go ahead. I did not know you were the second.
I'm the second. Yeah.
You know, I didn't know this until I got to Congress. We never had a Muslim judge until I nominated one to the President of the United States on the district court.
Sure
from
did.
New Jersey, right? From New Jersey.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
sure did. Yeah.
Yes.
Pioneer.
Yes.
I remember Keith and I coming to visit you as mayor with some of your fellow Muslim donors and
Yes.
friends, and we had a great time. And I think you had just finished coming from the gym. You took time out in your office, and at that time we left you to go to a home, and Imran Khan was in that home. I didn't know who he was. I thought he looked like a Pakistani Richard Gere. He would later be the Imran Khan who is now incarcerated, who became the head of Pakistan. But it was during that same day.
Wow.
But so I was raised in Indianapolis. My wonderful mother, who was brilliant, held a doctorate. She suffered from schizophrenia, unfortunately. And she had an episode, so she and I wound up in a shelter.
How old were you?
I was 7 at the time, 6 or 7 at the time. And I was placed in a guardian home, and my grandmother got wind, so she raised me. And through that, she was a locally elected official. She lived in a very rough neighborhood, and she introduced me to community. So I was raised by the village. You know about that. And it was through that experience, I went to church with her, a Baptist church. Shout out to Tabernacle Missionary Baptist Church, the great Reverend Jonathan Bailey. Wonderful speaking style, service, very extemporaneous. But for a minute, I was in Catholic school. I was an altar boy. I was headed toward priesthood, and then puberty hit, and I said, well, let's rethink this. So, but I served under other great folks like Father Kelly, Father Fitzgibbon, Father Ramos. And at a very young age, I had Muslims in my family, my great uncles and imam. I saw the impact that Muslims had on our community, along with some of my theological queries. It really spoke to me at a very young age. And to the chagrin of my grandmother, at the age of 17, I was arrested at a mosque. The mosque was being surveilled, and they would kind of harass the Muslims. And at that time, as a juvenile...
I'm sorry, you surveilled by who?
Local law enforcement, local police department, shout out to IMP. I later became a cop, which is interesting. But I was arrested along with another young man.
Well, what crime? What charges?
Well, they tried to charge us with battery on a police officer, resisting arrest, and fleeing. And at that time, as a juvenile, you couldn't get released on the weekends. I woke up the next morning in the juvenile facility, and I saw some guys I went to school, I played football with, and I said, hey, your sister told me you had moved. He said, no, I've been here. I said, oh, let me get out of here, you know. And so the head of the facility said, these folks want to make sure you're okay. They won't leave until you're okay. And so I looked out of a window, and the whole parking lot was filled up with folks from the community. You had pastors, you had Muslims, you had artists. And so they released me, and I was popular in school, even though the press wouldn't release my name because I was a juvenile. And that kind of sent me on a trajectory. I was watching my grandmother, but she was still my grandmother, involved in politics and food banks. But it was through that I became involved in community and activism. You know, you can be a revolutionary when you don't have a mortgage, you know.
When you don't have a mortgage.
And so through that and throughout high school and college, I as a young Muslim, I helped with local ministries. Dr. William Hanna, who was a pastor in town, who had the man-to-man program. But it was through that small experience as a child of having been in a shelter that I felt this sense of commitment to giving back to the people. And that looked different. Now, I'm a failed rapper. Hakeem knows this. I'm a failed MC.
I was going to get to this.
I'm
I'm learning a lot.
I'm a failed MC.
What was your MC name again?
I went through many names. I was the one-man posse, to give you an 80s reference.
The one
I was in a group called the SWAT Team. I was MC Delight, but my man from Stetsasonic had that name, so I had to retract that. I was ADC. I used to be a breakdancer, but I'm most known for being the Juggernaut. I was in a group called XN and then Foothill Cypher. Met Tupac, opened up for Ice Cube, Too Short.
Are you serious?
With a group Catch 22.
That's how we get down in the house.
That's right, man. It's my love for words. I'm a failed rapper, man.
This is a flavor we do not have in the Senate. I will say that right now. It is a flavor we don't have in the Senate.
Is there a little sample?
Yeah, come on, man.
Just what I need my opponents to use that. You may appreciate the bars, but there are expletives in there. But I know exactly. But watching my grandmother and watching folks in the community kind of inform my sense of activism. I thought as a young man, it was outside agitation, protesting, which is critically important. But as I grew, I realized that you needed outside agitation with some instigation on the inside to produce legislation that's effective and it impacts people in a real sense. And so after college, I became a police officer, ironically. I managed a few campaigns. I ran for school board and lost. That was my first loss. And then I ran for city council. I sat on the council, and then I ran for Congress. My grandmother passed, and she didn't live to see me go to Congress. But it was through that commitment and making friends with people like Hakeem Jeffries and yourself that really reinforces my sense of duty and commitment.
So your grandmother passed when exactly?
In 2007. I came to Congress in 2008. It took me 5 races. I mean, I ran against fellow Democrats, brilliant people, but I was called terrorist. Obama was running. Keith Ellison was in Congress, so you had 3 sleeper cells running for office, as they framed it, you know. So those were fun times, waking up every day to a blog posting or some
If you had to say, what is one of the pieces of wisdom your grandmother left you with in how to get through tough times?
You know, she told me before she passed, she used the carrot and stick, obviously. She's from that tradition of pick out your switch.
Okay.
But she told me one thing, you know, I was kind of complaining to her. I said, you know, I wish we had a bigger family. I have a lot of cousins now, so that so do you all. But she said, you know, sweetheart, you're going to have to make the world your family the way I did.
Wow.
And I kind of operate in that way of kind of expanding, making the world my family, whether you're Jewish, Christian, Muslim, non-theist. I see the humanity in everyone I attend to.
And what was it about Islam? I mean, you were raised exposed to a number of faiths.
Sure.
What was it about Islam that called you?
Well, I think for me it was it calmed some of my theological questioning. Father Fitzgibbon and others at St. Rita helped with that because they were very steady. And shout out to Reverend Bailey too at Tabernacle. But to become a priest, obviously you have to be well studied and versed in theology and those kinds of things. But I think Islam, the work that I saw being done in the community, protecting communities, and of course there are different Islamic faith traditions, as you all know. And I think what spoke to me was the selflessness and the sense of community. When you go into a mosque or a masjid, you see people from all races. Everyone's on the floor, it's all equal. And I think for me, that reaffirmed my sense of community. And that sense of community and giving back to the less fortunate, that's consistent in all of our faith traditions.
Right.
And how do you see this moment right now? Because, you know, we're here on the steps of the United States Capitol with some great leaders from across the nation and the American people with us. And we're preparing to enter into a season where Republicans are trying to jam down the throats of the American people a budget that will take away health care, take away nutritional assistance, take away a lot of the supports for everyday Americans.
Absolutely.
Right? For everyday Americans that we rely upon. What's your view of the moment and what we need to do collectively to be able to get through it.
And I just wanted to ask you to keep the thread, though, of your faith. Why is it an affront to you, and what you feel that drives you into this moment from your faith tradition too?
Well, one of the pillars of Islam is zakat, which is charity.
Say it again.
Zakat, which means charity. I think in this moment, to the leaders questioning, is understanding that we have an obligation as representatives and advocates. We're not here to lord over you. We're not here to be your ruler or master. We are representatives of your taxpayer interests. For my Republican friends who love to espouse their commitment to their traditions, their faith traditions, the scriptures talks about the least of these.
Excuse my cough.
How committed are you to the least of these?
CLPD.
Are you so afraid and obsessed with Donald Trump playing in your districts, primarying you, that you would overlook the apparent distress, the apparent food deserts, the apparent impact and devastation that crippling SNAP programs will have on your constituents, perhaps even some of your relatives? Cutting back on Medicaid,
Yes, it
cutting
will.
back on Medicare does not
It will
only
help my family.
unethical,
It will hurt
I would say
my family.
it goes against the Abrahamic
Hurt.
traditions of taking care of the downtrodden, the unfortunate, the least of these. And so as Leader Jeffries fights, as you fight, as our advocates fight, we have to raise the point. Are we here to posture? Are we here for the pageantry? Or are we here as Republicans and Democrats to do what's right and be good stewards and caretakers over taxpayer interests?
And actually, Andre Carson. But can I ask you?
Yeah.
So I had a chance to study a little of Islam.
So you're from Jersey, how could you not?
Yeah, I'm from Newark. Newark, I know. There's a mosque on my corner.
And Brooklyn, don't get me started.
Yeah. Call the service on Fulton Street. Yeah.
Come on, whoa, yes sir. Yes, sir.
But first of all, my favorite Muslim poet was a man named Muhammad Ali.
Oh,
and that great poem, 2 words, me, we. But it actually reflects an ideal within Islam of the oneness of humanity.
Absolutely.
That there may be different faiths,
Sure.
but there's a oneness in humanity.
Yeah.
What you do to another, you do to me.
That's right.
That's a very big part of the faith, yes?
It is. Even in Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him's last farewell address, he mentioned that there is no superiority of the white, of the black, or the Arab, or the non-Arab. All are one. And even in the Quran, it says, we created you in tribes and nations that you may know one another. If flowers have variations in different colors, why can't human beings? The same with animals, you know? And I think that when we get past our own mythologies, when we get past our own histories, when we get past what we think makes us better than one another, we can see our commonality, we can see our humanity. And at the end of the day, we want safer communities. We want access to affordable health care. We want to feel like we have some kind of trajectory in life that gives us a great standard of living. And so our issues are universal. Our methodologies may vary.
But you cannot not care. Like, if there's a whole big boat, there's a hole under your seat.
Come on.
I cannot not care about that hole.
Come on.
It doesn't affect me.
Absolutely.
Right? And so if there are children in, Indiana
Sure.
or New Jersey or New York that are suffering, to think that we live in some kind of walled area, that's not going to affect my life.
Wow.
In addition to that, the wealthiest nation on the planet, the fact that we would have so much child poverty.
That's right.
And what is child poverty? It's a moral obscenity. Right?
The king said it best, injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. So if you see injustice, and it's all throughout, this budget that we're going to have to work through and defeat in the next few weeks, it's important for everybody to rise up in defense of their constituents, whether you have a D or an R behind your name. And I think it was also King who made the point that budgets are a reflection of your morality, your values, and the decisions that you make to lift people up or to tear people down.
Oh, that's so
good. The reality is of this budget that decisions are being made in what has been presented and outlined to tear people down. That's immoral. That's right. We need to fight against it with everything we have, and it's great to have a champion like Andre Carson, otherwise known as Juggernaut, in the United States House, the People's House.
Thank you.
To battle with us.
Thank you, Leader Jeffries.
A question though,
Yes, sir.
I lean on history often when I think about the present.
Yes, sir.
And moments that somehow we got through. example, there was a dark moments after we won Brown versus Board of Education. There was this massive backlash educationally all throughout the South. They were literally, entire towns were getting rid of their public schools.
Yes.
And sending kids to private schools.
Yes.
It was the start of the so-called choice.
Yes. That's right.
And so you had this backlash that took generations to do something about. And I think about that period where even though Donald Trump is being stopped in the courts by even 9-0 decisions.
Yes.
He's acting like a defiant George Wallace
Ooh,
that is saying, I don't care what the Supreme Court says.
Yeah.
I'm still going to be doing these things and these practices. He's taking back money. He's in court now, but once he destroys a program like Meals on Wheels, that we, both houses, both chambers, Republicans and Democrats had funded, he's clawing that money back. That's a violation of separation of powers. It reminds me again of other people that have tried to undermine. So I'm wondering if you have a moment in history that you look at and what the people did there as to inform what we should do now.
Well, there are many moments. That's a great question. I mean, I even look at ending slavery, and it wasn't just legislators who did it. You had movements on the ground. You had the abolitionist movement on the ground. You had Frederick Douglass. You had the feminist movement on the ground. You had women's lib on the ground. Even the desegregation of the military. It took movements on the ground to force Harry Truman to do the right thing. Movements on the ground to allow President Johnson to do what he had to do in terms of the Voting Rights Act and the Civil Rights Act. It even took movements on the ground for us to elect the first black president. Who knows, we may be sitting with the next black president. But it takes movements on the ground, and it takes a collective of people to get the job done.
And so you said Frederick Douglass, I got to quote it.
Come on, let's go.
Okay, if there is no struggle,
Woo!
There's no
There is
progress.
no progress. Talk to me
those
now.
who profess the faith of freedom yet deprecate agitation,
Yes, sir.
like those who want the waters without the awful roar of the ocean,
That's
the
right.
rain without the thunder and the lightning.
That's right.
And so this understanding that you have to fight,
Yes.
you have to stand up.
Yes.
That apathy is the danger here.
Absolutely.
Indifference is the poison here.
Absolutely.
That leaders will get away with everything they can. You know, what did Frederick Douglass said, that the limits of tyranny are prescribed by the endurance of those who they want to oppress.
And it's important for the American people to understand that this flood the zone strategy, the parade of horribles that is being unleashed on the American people daily, sometimes hourly, is all part of an intentional strategy to try to convince the American people that it's all inevitable.
That's right.
And that nothing can stop it. But that's the furthest thing from the truth.
That's right.
And we're seeing in the Congress, we're seeing in the courts, we're seeing in communities all across the country, people rise up in principled opposition.
Absolutely.
And that's important. We got to break through this notion that it's all inevitable, because it's not. And in fact, as you talked about, Corey, that what we've seen almost immediately, and we have Maya Wiley with us, and we look forward to talking about some of the efforts by the legal community to push back. I think at this point, and we're not even at the 100-day mark, there have been more than 200 lawsuits filed against over 100 different unlawful and unconstitutional executive orders. And there have been at least 100 different judicial decisions freezing in place the actions that Trump is trying to take through preliminary injunctions, temporary restraining orders, or decisions that get closer to finality. So the principal opposition is real, and it's happening in many different places. And this notion of inevitability is something that people who tend toward authoritarianism try to project across the society. Nothing can be further from the truth.
So can I ask some brave people to come sit on these two steps?
Well, that's good.
Come on up.
That's good.
A fellow bald-headed black man.
That's right. Come on now. Come on, brother. Tribesman. Yeah. Tribe member.
May not look so bad. You're a little too skinny.
Good to see you. How you doing, sister? Good to see you.
But I think, come on in. Pull it in a little closer. Come on. You've been giving me the best smiles out there. What's your name?
My name's Charles.
Charles, where are you from?
I'm from upstate New York.
All right.
I'm in school here in D.C. at American University.
Are you guys all at American University?
Yeah.
All right.
All right.
I'm Jersey.
Jersey? Where in Jersey?
Jackson Township in Ocean County.
Listen, who doesn't know Jackson Township? Bring attention. answer, right? Come on. Okay. And where are you from?
California.
I mean, that's like saying I'm from like Eastern Canada. Where in California?
I'm from San Diego.
From San Diego. Okay, very, very
And
good.
what part of upstate New York you from?
I'm from the Catskills area,
Okay,
Congressman Josh Riley's district.
Okay, I got you.
Okay, okay.
Good to remember.
Yeah.
Sullivan?
And there's a lot of people that are not as courageous that have not come up. There's some spots here if there's anybody who wants to come a little closer. But okay, so I don't know what the order is. We got two of the more powerful people.
Yeah. That's my
Here.
cue.
Andre, you don't have to leave if you don't want to, man. You can hang out.
Well, listen, this is kind of Sesame Street-esque and being on the block in Jersey and Brooklyn. I feel good. In Indiana,
Yeah, that's right.
yeah. I'll pass the mic.
Yeah, just pass the mic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's right. Very much for coming up
It
here.
was so great to
What
meet
an
you.
honor. Thank you. What an honor. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right,
Great.
You want us? I love this. I think this is the first time I've ever sat on the steps of the Capitol. Is it the first time you've sat on the steps?
Definitely.
Have you never saw the Capitol?
I've never.
I
Oh well,
think I would have been arrested.
I've gotten arrested. Wait, no, excuse me. I've gotten arrested sitting on the steps
Well,
of
we
the
won't
Capitol.
arrest you, but I do.
My bad.
But you do
But
know the
those
song.
steps.
I'm just a bill. I'm only a bill, and I'm sitting
Yeah,
here.
Capitol Hill.
No, everybody stop.
No, no,
Nobody loves arrestment.
That's how I first learned about what it takes to get a bill passed. And it's too hard to accept. But you and I have worked across the aisle in partnership with these people to get some good legislation passed. But we are sitting with somebody who as much as I love and respect her, she married up. You
Yes,
have to- you
I
did-
certainly did.
You married up. I have been in the press. I have been in the services. I mean, on the day that we want to talk about faith and faith traditions, you're very qualified by osmosis because you were married to a rabbi.
I mean, thank God.
Yes.
Because-
Baruch Hashem. Baruch
Exactly.
Hashem.
And she actually wanted me to tell you something that she's doing right now,
Oh my God.
which is that there's a lot of people. I mean, look, all of us. Her name is Sharon, by the way, Rabbi Kondam. But all of us, the four of us, look, we get to every single day do things directly to try to stop this chaos and this, cruelty.
Yes.
But a lot of people say to her, I'm a regular person, what can I do? And so what she's created is something called the Beacon Project, which is kind of sharing the light. And every Thursday afternoon or evening, 7 o'clock, regardless of time zone, people now go in community, as the congressman had said, and stand together with whatever signs they want to project about what they're thinking. Compassion over cruelty. We love our immigrant neighbors. My sign, which I made a few weeks ago, says protect our kids.
Wow.
And so in communities across the country, Thursday, 7 o'clock, people are standing together with these signs saying, we don't want this. This is not, whether we voted for it or stayed at home or, voted against this is not what we
And
want.
where do they stand?
And so in Teaneck, for example, there's
Teaneck, New Jersey?
Teaneck, New Jersey, they're standing in hundreds. Yes, they're standing in hundreds of different places already. And this is now still by just word of mouth. So in Teaneck, New Jersey, 4 weeks ago, it started with 3 people. This Thursday, there were 50 people there, all with their signs. And so just like we're on the steps right now, it's like we stand, when I'm home, we stand on the corner, I mean, several people do it, on the corner of Academy and Broadway.
Wow.
And, so this is now, it started in like 5 places, and last Thursday it was over 100 places. And so by word of mouth, this is now happening every Thursday from 7 to 7:30, just people gathering and saying, this is not what we want, this is what we want. And our signs say what we want. So she wanted me to make sure, when you can be there on a Thursday, we wanted to invite you to the Teaneck gathering
But you know
to
what?
make sure.
Now, we brought in Randy Weingarten,
Yes.
who we are very incredible partner and wife and rabbi. But of course, you are the
Yes.
president of the American Federation of Teachers, have been a long-time educator, champion how do you see this moment
That's why I
right
can't go to
now?
school.
And tell the people some of the things that you're working on to get us through it.
So, thank you. Thank you, the person I want to say, Mr. Speaker, and we need you to be the speaker.
I want to applaud.
You know, we do. Because, you know, both of you bring together the righteous indignation as we make this fight. And this is Sunday, and this is church on the steps. So part of what we're doing in terms of education is that we have to fight back. But we have to fight back in a way that we bring people with us. I think a lot about King's last book, Chaos versus Community.
Right.
And because what autocrats do, and you know, look, as you both know, I'm a history teacher and lawyer by training and by avocation and love. But what autocrats do is it's not just the inevitability, but they want to create such fright and such fear and such isolation that everyone feels alone. And that the chaos is about creating that fear and that isolation. And so what we need to do, first and foremost, is to recreate community. And what public schools are is that they become the center of community.
Yes.
What universities are in a campus, it's the center of a community.
Yes.
So immediately watch what they've done. Attack public schools, dismantle the Department of Education, attack universities. And yes, of course, working to fight anti-Semitism is really important, but the pretext of anti-Semitism, instead to use that as a weapon, as a cudgel, to attack every university in America and attack knowledge in America. And what do they fear? They fear critical thinking. They fear problem solving. They fear a knowledgeable citizenry, because a knowledgeable citizenry is what can actually then say, no, this budget is wrong.
Right.
No, this budget doesn't work. No, this budget helps the gazillionaires, not the people. No, you're doing wealth redistribution to those who are already mighty, and they don't want that. So the first thing they did, I mean, in the first 100 days, how do you, as a president of the United States, attack education? How do you do executive order after executive order, including a dear colleague letter, which, by the way, we just got 3 injunctions on Thursday. Not 1, not 2, but 3 injunctions that basically said, no, you cannot take money away from poor kids because you want us not to teach Jim Crow. Sorry, you can't do that 3 times. And so what
Where does that come from? This idea, this desire to erase our history, sanitize it, whitewash it.
Well, it's even worse than erasing American history. It's erasing American progress.
Yes.
To answer your question in a shorter way, we're trying to
That's
actually.
teacher's privilege right now.
Thank you.
Preach
We're-
Sunday morning.
Thank you. We're trying to actually build community, nurture community, make sure both kids and adults, working families feel like they're not alone. That's number 1, safe and welcoming. And then the second is how we educate, and then how we escalate, organize, mobilize, so that people are on the streets and fighting back. Because the way in which you fight back authoritarianism is that you fight back together on the streets. That is the way we can help you in Congress. That's the way. It's great that the courts are doing their job right now, but if the court of public opinion does not do its job, then we cannot just rely in this moment on the courts. Yes.
What the hell?
Exactly right. And in fact,
Excuse my language,
I know
you
what
two.
I've done with my members a lot is say, look, we've never been through
Something going
this,
crazy upstairs.
frankly, as white Americans in the last 200 some odd years, but black Americans, and particularly in the South, have been through this all the time. The North too. But think about, and I've often looking at my, white colleagues, and I say to them, look, you're
Yeah,
not
it
used to
happened to me.
somebody knocking on your door. and taking you away, or punching the door and taking you away. And you can see
First
we have to,
that
this
was
is like,
mommy.
we have to meet people where they are.
I
We
said
have to make sure they
always
understand
make me
what's
do
going on,
stuff.
but
What?
with
Mommy
that
always make me do
knowledge
stuff. My slime.
also create that hope. And that's why I go back to the Beacon Project that Sharon is doing, because it has to be a combination of fighting, being part of community, fighting in the courts and the court of public opinion. And in that way, we help you in Congress do your job to do the fight to ensure that you are that Article 1 body that actually says we have to check the president. This is not what we wanted. So that's what we're trying to do.
But can I just press you on this, because your faith tradition speaks a lot to this idea of individual responsibility
Yes.
in service of the collective.
Yes.
That you stand up, even if you're just an individual, no matter what. One of my favorite parshas of all time is after Moses goes up to the mountaintop, gets the tablets, comes back down, and sees the Jewish people worshiping a golden calf, smashes the tablets. He's angry, and then God says, I will destroy these people and give you new people to lead. And then he snaps back to it and says in Hebrew, Ma Teni Nam Mi Sefreka. If you destroy these people, erase me from your book. God, I want no part of you. And it was so shook me that here is the Torah celebrating somebody that told off God in defense of the people. And it's almost like saying that no matter if it's an act of nature, no matter what the injustice is, you stand up and fight.
Yes.
In that exposition. And yet you have people that do say, I'm just one person, I'm just watching at home, what can I do? And you and I were pointing both to,
Exactly.
to Rabbi
Right, to
Wolf.
prepare a vote. Yeah.
It's amazing. It's not your duty to finish the work, but neither are you at liberty to neglect it.
Exactly.
Great Jewish wisdom there that everybody has to play a role.
Everybody has to do something.
Yes.
But we have to, and this is what we do in education, we have to empower people to feel like they can. And the agency, and part of what Trump does, and look, you know this, I was an AP Gov teacher at Claremont High School. Part of what the president does is that he says, I alone can fix it.
Look at that so I can see it better.
Yes.
Part of what education does is we say to kids, to young people, have the confidence. How do we build the confidence? How do we build the agency? That's part of why, you know, with their, when they do a Dear Colleague letter or they do an EO and they say, I'm taking it away from you. You have no power. Only I have power. We have to, part of why I focus so much on community, is that through collective action, that's what the labor movement is. Through collective action, we create power. Through doing things together.
Right.
So none of us, so that when we do things alone, they can target us. But together we can accomplish what's impossible to do alone. So it's a combination of how do we work in community? How do we support each other? How do we have some joy and some fun, like what both of you are doing today? And then also, how do we understand what they're doing and fight back in the way in which we can, so everyone feels that they are part of the tapestry?
You just made a point that just got me all excited when you said the history of the labor movement.
Yes. The Exodus story.
Yes.
The history of the labor movement. I love. We just went through Passover and Easter. The history of the labor movement is the Exodus story. I mean, think about it. 400 years, Pharaoh, Egypt, slavery. What happened? People didn't give up. They figured out a way. Now, hopefully, this will not be 400 years. Hopefully, this will be a few months. But at the end of the day, what did slaves do before the Civil War? What did people do between the Civil War, between Juneteenth and the Civil Rights Movement? We create community, and we fight back in community. And then we fight back in the ways that we can, but collectively. And then when we see an opening, we do that together. And so that's why it's the courts for me and the court of public opinion. And when I say the court of public opinion, it's about education. It's about actually telling, having webinars to talk to people about what is authoritarianism. What can people do when somebody knocks on the door of a school, an ICE agent, and says, I want these kids. And teachers say, no, where's your warrant? Where's your judicial warrant? So we are teaching people. A judge being arrested when she said, no, you don't have a judicial warrant.
The deportation of a 2-year-old American citizen to one of the most violent countries in the world. The cruelty absolutely is the point. You make a profound observation. Lincoln, one of our great presidents, of course, one of our greatest presidents, once made the observation that public sentiment is everything.
Exactly.
With it, nothing can fail. Without it, nothing can succeed.
Exactly right.
It's one of the greatest weapons
Exactly right.
that we have to push back against the assault, right, on our way of life, the assault on the rule of law, the assault on the economy, the assault on American democracy. And we're starting to see, public sentiment shift dramatically. We talked about Trump saying, I alone can fix it. And he lied to the American people, particularly about his intentions related to the economy. I'm going to fix the economy. We all agree, we were talking about this earlier, that the cost of living in America is far too high, and we want to do something about it. We want to make life more affordable for everyday Americans. We've got to do it. But instead, he's doing the exact opposite. Not only is he not fixing it, he's unraveling it.
So let me, one of the things that I've been, and look, as a school teacher, that I've been most concerned about is that truth is undermined at every moment. The disinformation, the misinformation. And so trust becomes really important in order to attack all of this. But we have to get back to truth, and we have to get back to people seeing that there are facts and there is fiction. But I think what's happened is that Trump, and you and I've had this conversation a couple of years ago. Think about what the framers did to try to make the president not a king, not to have a unitary executive. And Trump is doing the exact opposite. He's using EOs, undermining Congress, using executive orders to try to make it sound like he is all powerful. But what is now happening is the facts on the ground are showing something completely opposite. When shelves are empty in Walmart or in Costco, when the ports don't have goods, when all of a sudden you still see during Easter that eggs, are $12, $14, $15, so you can't do what you would like to do with eggs. You're seeing that kind of shift. When you see that we have a unit in Highland Falls, New Mexico, a hospital where someone died because of poor storage of infectious agents. And NIOSH was doing the investigation, and then they pulled NIOSH away. They pulled health and safety away. Look at what's happening where in Social Security, where people need to go to an office and people need to actually make, to get their Social Security, and all of a sudden somebody finds out they have been deadened. So I think what's happening is then dead.
I didn't even know about that.
I mean, so people are starting to see it and feel it, but this is that moment that we have to connect the dots. And you connect the dots, I think, not simply, I think people understand that this is Trump's economy, and he has taken what was a strong economy, not one that helped everyone, but a strong economy that needed to be strengthened, and put it into a ditch. But our job, I think, and I think this is the advocate's job, not just the congressional job, our job is to help both tell that story, meet people where they are, and again, work in community, which is the antidote to the strongman.
So people criticized King for being a rabble rouser, and he would, and you're disturbing the peace. And he used to say that the absence of violence is not the presence of justice. And that sometimes you have to comfort the disturbed, but disturb the comfortable using creative tension, creative nonviolent protests.
I mean, look at both King and Gandhi. Look at the Salt March. The nonviolent protest is going to be, look, April 5th was formidable. We need more nonviolent protest in terms of the fight to show that the people are with the two of you. The people are with the righteous. We learned a lot from King. We learned a lot from Gandhi. We need to be out on the streets in a nonviolent way to say, this is not what I voted for if somebody voted for Trump, and this is not what America is if somebody didn't.
So let me take you to a historic moment. And first of all, I want to invite
I think we're getting word that
Yeah.
Randy's got to run.
Yeah.
Okay,
Let's give it up for Randy.
Randy
Weinberg.
I know you're catching a plane.
Yes.
Thank you so much. Thank you for preaching the righteous.
Thank you.
Andrew, where's the TNet? Where's the TNet project? I'm not a TNet project.
Oh, I got
Oh, you got it. All right.
Oh, and,
Yeah.
All right, so I want to say a couple things to the people that are watching. Come down to the Capitol if you're able. We're seeing more and more people gather here. Some joggers have stopped. Thank you for stopping to the joggers. I hate to mess up your cardio scores for the day, but we're grateful that it's worth it. Where are you all from? Where are you from? Every Person Run Club. If every person can run club, every person can run down here and join what we're doing. But you don't have to. If you're watching online, please also think about DMing us. This is the one time you can sneak up into somebody's DM without feeling guilty about it. We want to hear your stories. We want to hear what you have to say. Randy Weingart's leaving, but I wanted to tell you guys one of my favorite. I think she was the first female cabinet member, labor secretary for FDR, Frances Perkins. The American University students are shaking their heads up and down. She was the first female cabinet secretary. Yes. Yes. Some other people say yes. But the story I know about her that I love is the story I know about her that I love is that the shirtwaist factory fire. This horrific fire where the working conditions were horrible in our country. They literally sealed off the exits because they didn't want the women to possibly leave and take a break. And a fire broke out and they had no exit, and it was this horrific people dying. And she said she stood there on the pavement watching people jump to their deaths. These women who were in these sweatshops having to jump to their deaths to try to escape and flee the fires. And it so shook her that she saw that my not speaking up about the working conditions, about what people were suffering, my silence was complicit in the injustices that were going on, and that I had to figure out ways to step forward. Even though I was just an individual, I had to get more active. And so the question is what are we being silent about right now as people are threatened to lose their health care? How are we being silent when people, beautiful Americans with disabilities, will lose their systems of support? How can we remain silent at a time that women who are giving birth, so many of them who rely on Medicaid, are going to lose their support, and yet again threaten to drive up our maternal mortality rates? Already shamefully in this country, we have the worst of any developed nations. These are the things that we have to ask ourselves, which side of history do I want to stand on? Am I standing on the side of silence and complicity and apathy? Or am I going to say that this is a moral moment when the very character of my country is in the breach? I'm going to stand in that breach. I'm going to speak up. This is not normal, so I'm not going to act like this is normal. I'm going to do something different, leave my comfort zone, sit on the Capitol steps, speak up, join a march, join a demonstration. Because could you repeat that powerful quote by Lincoln? I think we should repeat it every hour on the hour. Hakeem, we have now been out here. We have now been out here for 3 hours since sunup. We've now been out here. What's the Lincoln quote?
So Lincoln was very clear at the end of the day that public sentiment is everything. With it, nothing can fail. Without it, nothing can succeed.
You're not doing your inside voice.
That's right. Public sentiment is everything.
Public sentiment is everything.
Public sentiment is everything. With it, nothing can fail. Without it, nothing can succeed. John Lewis told us all the time, never give up, never give in. Show up, stand up, speak up, right? Get into necessary trouble, good trouble. That was all in service of shaping the hearts and minds of the American people. And that's what we have to continue to do, right? Because it's an all hands on deck effort. It's an all hands on deck effort in the Congress, an all hands on deck effort in the courts, which we're going to talk about with Maya.
But I'm going to quote, you're going to quote Lincoln, I'm quoting Al Bacon. Come on, let me take a little Al Bacon for you. We are the leaders that we've been looking for. That this is a moment where we need more people to recognize not who's going to stop this, but I'm going to stand up and do something to stop it.
At the end of the day, right, it's the American people, above all else, who will rise up, make it clear this is not normal, this is not acceptable, and together we're going to end this national nightmare.
Amen. So who do we have between us, man?
We got the great Maya Wiley.
Yes.
I say that not only because she lives in Brooklyn.
Oh.
But we appreciate
We're
that.
Brooklyn.
Oh my gosh! I feel the Hudson River suddenly slide in here, separating us.
But Maya, tell us about yourself. You're one of the great civil rights leaders in the nation, and tell us your story. And you have a very powerful story. You know, your parents, the journey that you're on, and what's led you to this moment.
And what is your faith traditions of your parents? What gave you your moral kind of upbringing?
How much time do we have? All right, y'all just said a lot, and I'm not going to do all that you just said because we'll be here all day. But I do want to start by saying, one, I'm very proud to be president and CEO of the Leadership Conference on Civil and Human Rights, which is the nation's oldest and largest civil rights coalition, 75 years old today. And I'm saying that proudly because several of the leaders you've just heard from are our members. Randy Weingarten, Becky Pringle, I think Minnie was here earlier, Minnie Timaraju, and Rabbi Jonah Pesner told me shout out my rabbis I sent down there from the rack. So do I have our rabbis?
Did I hear yet?
They're not here yet. Okay, Jonah, I did shout them out, Jonah.
Yeah, the rabbinical crew is coming. Send all the rabbis, please.
But I share that because the civil rights tradition that I'm so proud to play a small part in is a majority of this country. It does look like America. And that is the tradition I was raised in. I mean, I grew up with parents who were active in the civil rights movement. My mother was a white woman from West Texas who was raised in the Southern Baptist Church and went to Union Theological Seminary as soon as she could because she recognized that the teachings of the leaders were not consistent with the teachings of Jesus Christ, her Lord. And that she realized she had to follow the teachings and not the people who were professing to be the teachers. And I say that because I believe that's a moment that we still find ourselves in. But meeting my father, who was a professor of chemistry at Syracuse as a black man in the 1950s, who...
You say meeting your father. Help me understand.
They met?
Oh, they met the two of them?
At Syracuse.
At
Sorry.
Syracuse.
It wasn't that deep a statement.
Okay.
What was deep was that it was not lawful for them to get married in many states in the Union at the time they got married because he was black and she was white. And that they started organizing in Syracuse because they wanted to show that civil rights violations were as dire in the North as they were in the South, that the struggle for civil rights was not something that existed only in one part of the country, but was necessary in all parts of the country. And they very much believed and understood that if we were to end poverty, that we could not do it without rights, but that our rights must lead to the end of poverty. And I say, right? Amen. And I say that sitting, I mean, Hakeem, if today, last Sunday, I was in a church that is in Hakeem Jeffrey's district, Bethany Baptist Church, which is a storied civil rights church Reverend Adolphus Lacey is not watching this because he's probably preparing a sermon right now. But I say that
I
because
said to Reverend Lacey, I'm not in church because I'm on the Capitol steps right now.
Church is not for
me too, Reverend Lacey. But this is a day the Lord has made. Okay. But the reason I say that is because the civil rights movement always fought to make sure the hungry got fed. Always fought to make sure people could have housing that was decent and affordable. Always fought. Operation Breadbasket came out of the civil rights movement. In fact, if Randy Weingarten, who was just here, would be able to say this as well, the reason we have federal dollars to support schools with high levels of kids who need more support to learn, to get the things they deserve, is because the civil rights movement demanded it. It led to Title I. The very things we are sitting on these steps today in order to be united around, to tell this building and our leaders, no, you can't. Take from us what we fought for every single child. And no one in the civil rights movement asked what the color of the child would be. We didn't. Nobody in the civil rights movement asked what the religion of the recipient would be. Nobody asked what zip code it would benefit. The fight has always been for everyone, and that was the tradition of my parents. That was their belief, not just only in their marriage, but in their views of faith, but also the faith they had that if we fought, we would win. I'm sorry, what was your question?
Let the church say amen.
Okay, so can we just stick with your parents for a second? So
because it's a fascinating story.
I do. I want to know, like, so they raised you to be this strident, unapologetic activist, like,
Yeah, yes, they did.
Okay, but like, what were you like going into high school? Like, was this...
I was a nightmare because they raised me to be strident, and then they regretted it a little bit.
and where'd you go to college?
So, first of all, let me just say this, because I grew up here in D.C., because while I was born in Syracuse, I do have two homes, but they moved here because my father felt like we had to do more for people who are poor in this country, which, by the way, the majority of white people who are poor were white. We forget these things, right? And this will go back to a little bit of that chaos that you were talking about, Hakeem. But the reality is, they came here because my father thought we actually have to figure out how to fight for people here, where people who make decisions are, and connect the people who are in communities, who are organizing in communities, to here, to the power here. So they came, and my mother went to work to pay the bills, so my father could found the National Welfare Rights Organization, who said, you know who's going to save us? Well, okay, he said black women.
Did he really say that?
Basically, because he made the board of directors the women who themselves were on welfare, who were black. And he also believed that these were also the women who would bridge the divides the country was intentionally driving, to drive wedges between white women and black women, between black women and Latinas, between everybody who all needed the same things, but have long been told that we are not in this together. And so that's what he did, and that's why I grew up here. I mean, but part of what my parents did that was so important is because they believed in public schools. They put me in the neighborhood public school, which was a segregated public school. It was a public school where I was one of the only students who was not getting a free lunch. It was a school where my classroom was overcrowded, and where I was 2 years behind grade level by the second grade with a
That's why people with
So that is
disabilities.
protective filing. So whenever you get your actual appointment, if you file online or whatever the case may be, make sure you tell the claim specialist at Social Security, the employee at Social Security, and says, oh yeah, by the way, I also want to check.
Because the teacher had 35 kids in the classroom. But these are the things we're sitting here today for. My parents made decisions that despite their opportunities showed me personally what it was like for everyone who did not have, because they didn't think they were better. So when we're sitting here, when you, Leader Jeff, and you, Senator Booker, are doing what you're doing here, when Randy Weingarten is doing what she's doing in communities, what her wife Sharon is doing, what Becky's doing, what everyone here is doing, is we're recognizing that when you say that we should give $314,000 back to billionaires in a year, we won't give $2,500 for a program to serve a whole bunch of people. That's what we're talking about, and that is
Can I, when you were talking about these interconnections, I know we're pull one thread, but we haven't talked about all of the steps yet, which is environmental justice and how it impacts how often communities, rural and urban, from the lead paint problems to the water problems to the air quality. And the reason I bring that up is because I know a lot of the civil rights movement talked about that, and now we have a president that is cutting back on the people that are enforcing environmental justice laws and allowing polluters to literally pollute more toxic, removing the restraints from them, and the impact that has on kids trying to learn asthma race or often charged with lead poisoning is often charged. Did you experience that as you were coming up a little bit? And I don't know if my team is going to add that too.
Well, yeah, I mean, I was just going to say, in Brooklyn we have a corridor. So in Brooklyn, and it's not just Brooklyn, it's everywhere. We have these corridors where people are in conditions where they're getting all of the pollution because of the truckers, or they're getting all of the pollution because of where industrial is happening. And they're living there because that's where they can afford housing. And that's usually where those, we call them environmental insults, but get located, right? It's not, there's been studies that show people don't go to environmentally dangerous places. The environmentally dangerous places get placed where people have less power. Okay. But the reason I say that is, we've got whole schools where you have high rates of kids with asthma, not because they have some other reason they have asthma, but because they're living in a place where their air is constantly poisoned. Sometimes their school buildings have asbestos or lead. Where they're in apartment buildings, I represented a client when I was at the Legal Defense Fund when we were trying to stop a hospital from closing down maternal and child care beds in Harlem. St. Luke's Roosevelt Hospital when it was merging. But my client, who had children who were lead poisoned because the apartment building they lived in, the landlord never made it better. And they just had shipping lead paint in their apartment. And they were in the same schools that didn't have the resources to give them all the supports they needed. And their hospital was being relocated. And several of the kids had asthma as well. I mean, we often see these things going together. But the problem is that we're seeing problems, and rather than seeing the solutions, like making sure we have public, accountable, transparent ways of making sure people aren't being treated badly. That's all government is. We're attacking the people who are paid to help us stay safe. We are firing people who are not only workers, but their day job is to protect our health. We're pulling down data because we don't want to know who's being harmed where, because if we knew, people would demand we do something about it. So what Randy was talking about was how we have an administration trying to poke both fingers in our eyes so we can't see, slap some tape across our mouths so that we can't speak, and then tell us, including our not-for-profit are paying attention to the problems that people are raising in their communities get called terrorists. Have our federal dollars cut, have the grants programs that pay for community groups to do the services like test water quality, like go into schools and teach kids, like my brother did in Brooklyn, to teach kids how they can test their air quality. Because when government fails, it's because they're not paying attention, and we gotta wake it up.
So you lead the leadership conference on civil and human rights, which is an umbrella organization of all legacy civil rights groups, as well as newer civil rights groups and organizations that have emerged, in defense of freedom and democracy for the people in the street. Yeah, and so tell me. Fuzzy mic.
Fuzzy mic too, right? Fuzzy mic too.
Senators are always late to the dance.
Standing ovation, they applauded for him. Watch this moment where Zelensky walks in. You'll hear how Anderson Cooper describes the scene. Let's play the clip. This is what
The assault on the American way of life, the assault on the law, the
You do a little bit, you said this when you were teaching as well. So, could you just start from us, explain to us what's happening in the legal picture? Answer the question. I just want to make sure that we understand that for people watching, I get text messages from you giving me these alerts like 5 Along Fire, call me, let's talk. But I think we need to build the case from here. Okay?
I will do that with that. I would be remiss if I didn't start this by saying the Leadership Conference, which is over 240 national organizations, as I said, every state, almost every state, we look like America, we are America, that's what civil rights are, that's what we do. But we do it well because we have allies here on the Hill. And one, Leader Jeffries, you've been such an important voice, but I don't know if you all know this. Leader Jeffries, have you been in 4 countries in 5 days? Okay. I don't think you slept in 5 days. Was in Copenhagen yesterday. And he's sitting here today.
On his 4th hour.
On his 4th hour. Because this is a leader who leads and shows up. And Senator Booker, what you did with 25 hours. Strong Thurman's record of segregation, of racial hate, of denial will not stand as the record that is going to stand.
I just want to ask some of the folks over here, especially that bald brother over there. You guys want to come sit up here? You got the youngest person here. He is too cute not to be in the camera. The future leader that he is. If he doesn't want to come up, he doesn't have to. I don't know what your sweatshirt says to the young leader, William and Mary. Come on up and sit behind us. My law school classmate, who I haven't seen in so long, Tom. Up the steps, man. Right here, brother. The statute of limitations is up. I copied your notes in class. I love you. I'm shooting you a happy birthday. Okay. And anybody else who wants to come up? Sir, what's your name?
Hi, I'm Emmanuel. I'm good friends with your cousin Pam.
Emmanuel is friends with my cousin Pam. We sat there for the whole 25 hours. Now you're suddenly shy, Dr. Pamela. She's an emergency room doctor.
As well as the mass.
Thank you, Sarah, for being here. You worked at the State Court. Thank you for being out here today. Okay, now we can get back to our teaching.
So, the way they try to take our power they start with the pen. And on January 20th, the pen started writing that we didn't have the right to citizenship even if we were born here. That we didn't have the right to learn our history if it said race, if it said diversity, that government should not function if we care about inclusion. These were all executive orders. I won't even go through all of them because there were too many to go through. Because chaos is not a cause. The chaos had a cause. And it started with these executive orders. But the lawsuits started immediately. This is what you have to understand, and I think people know. The lawsuits started immediately because our first tool in the toolbox, in addition to our voice, is our ability to have lawyers who go to court and say, this is unconstitutional. And actually, Mr. President, you don't have the power of the pen, Congress does. Because the founders gave the pen to these people. The only reason these people have the pen is because we gave it to them, as the people. So that litigation started winning, by the way. We won. There have been lawsuits that have won temporary orders. Temporary, they're ongoing. From Trump appointees, this is the other thing. It is not about a court system that has an ideology when we have the right judges on the bench. Another thing we fight for is making sure we have the right judges on the bench. The right judges aren't about what party they're affiliated with. The right judges are about whether their positions are principled on the law and on the facts. And so we have had Trump-appointed judges saying, oh, you can't do that. But we've had that because we've had lawyers that went into court. So then what happens? There are executive lawyers, orders attacking lawyers for even representing clients and going to court and saying, we'll use our pen to say, oh, Perkins Coie and others, you can't go in these buildings, which means you can't represent your clients, which means we're telling your clients not to hire you as law firms. By the way, these are private businesses. Last I heard, the Republican Party actually liked free market system and the private sector. We're talking about the private sector. We're also talking about public attorneys eventually, because we'll get to the not-for-profit attacks. But the point is, once you see the power of the ability to have rights and to have legal representation, we see an administration attack it. And then we see some law firms capitulate. But then we see some other law firms that stand up and go to court and say, it is unlawful for you to tell us that we can't represent our clients, to block us from public buildings, to represent our clients who have a legal right to be represented and a right to choose us. So they are litigating now in courts. But then let's go back to what we're seeing that you just called out. We are seeing people with rights, like Gilman Abrego Garcia, who was protected with an order from the United States government that he could not be sent back to El Salvador because his life would be endangered. And this case, let's be clear, is not just about Gilman. It's about the fact that even when the government said, oh, we were wrong, that was an error. Oops. Oh, literally, oops. And no, we won't go back and ask a dictator to return a person we should have never sent. And we know about all of the other people, young men, Venezuelan, sent to El Salvador. First of all, Venezuelan, sent to El Salvador. That is not normal, people. Sent to El Salvador intentionally because it is a rights-abusing prison. And so we are seeing our American Civil Liberties Union as a member organization litigating to say, no, you can't. And many of these cases, there are restraining orders being entered against the government. And this administration saying, what exactly? What order? What order? Again, not normal. Not normal that this Supreme Court, which many of us would call a captured court, a court that has sadly lost a lot of public trust for ignoring its own case precedents. Even this court said, wait, no, we don't think you are abiding sufficiently to protect the rights of Kilmar Abrego Garcia. So the courts, so this is the next line of attack, and we're seeing this moving now, is taking power away from the courts to be able to issue those orders that say, yeah, no, you can't do this. That if it's a nationwide injunction, that just means that a judge can say, you're going to hurt people everywhere. We think you don't have the right to do this. We are going to say you have to stop until we finish this litigation. We don't know how it's going to come out, but we think there's a strong enough case. There's enough likelihood you're going to hurt people all over the country that we're going to say you have to hold on that. That's all that means. And yet now we have elected officials trying to take the power from the courts to protect us from the harm of an administration that thinks chaos is a cause.
Explain what's going on.
Yeah, well, I think to go back to the foundational point, which then leads us to this moment, is that, you know, this in many ways, what we are navigating through right now, was the worst nightmare of the framers of the Constitution. We've talked about the fact they were not perfect. They certainly had flaws, but they tried to set us on a march toward a more perfect union. And at that Constitutional Convention that took place in Philadelphia, 1787, historians have assessed that the word that was used the most during the Constitutional Convention certainly wasn't what I may have thought that word would be. My first guess probably would have been democracy. Now, democracy was in heavy rotation. That's my music terminology. It was in heavy rotation, but it wasn't the word that was used the most. Probably would have said, well, what about liberty? It's also used frequently, but it wasn't the word that was used the most by the assessment of historians. Third guess, I probably would have said freedom. Also in heavy rotation, but was not the word that was used the most. The word that was used the most during the Constitutional Convention, when the framers were trying to construct this republic that we've now inherited, was demagogue.
Wow.
It was demagogue. Think about it. They were trying to break free from a world where kings dominated.
Wow.
And so they were trying to construct a system that would be resilient enough to prevent the emergence of a singular figure like a king. And that was the whole premise behind separate and co-equal branches of government. It's interesting because Alexander Hamilton apparently used the word the most, by some calculations, 13 or 14 different times in the Constitution. And he said his greatest fear for the future of this country that was being built was that one day a demagogue might get elected and over a 4-year period of time try to turn into a tyrant. It was the framers' worst fear and nightmare. And now we're confronting someone who's acting like a king as opposed to trying to govern like the president. But the thing is, we were given the tools to push back against it. That was the whole premise of separate and co-equal branches of government, which is why here in the Congress, as we sit here getting ready to enter into weeks of debate around this reckless, dangerous, un-American budget that they're trying to jam down our throats, is that we don't work for a president. We don't have a monarch. We don't have a dictator. In America, we have a democracy. The people of the House and the Senate who serve in the House and the Senate need to recognize that we work for the American people. And we've got to serve the interests of the American people. That's the system that we inherited. And that's also why you've got judges who were given lifetime appointments so that they would be free of the political pressure that might otherwise accompany someone trying to act like a king who has the power to appoint but to get rid of a judge, or, as in some instances, having a judge that has to seek re-election. That doesn't exist in our system, and that's why we've seen some of the resilience, I think, at this moment.
What are they doing in the House about this impeaching of judges? Mention that for a second?
Well, I think they've tried to move legislation to reduce the power of judges to be able to make the independent decisions that they are making right now, or the reach of those decisions, precisely because lawyers like Maya and others have had such success. We talked about this earlier. At this point, more than 200 different lawsuits have been filed. There's been a flood, the zone approach, right, with all of this unconstitutional and unlawful action and executive orders, but that's been met with a flood, an avalanche of righteous litigation. And the American people are winning in court, not losing. And because the American people are winning, Republicans in the House are trying to now change the rules, strip judges of jurisdiction. But let's be clear, we are not going to let it happen.
And this is why Maya's incredible presence here is such an important reminder that there are areas we have to fight. So the first thing is, you said immediately when he started pushing illegal executive orders, you all tied them up in court. And this is the amazing thing. Trump appointed judges. Obama appointed judges. Bush appointed judges. All across the board, you're seeing the judges step up and stop them, right? That's correct. These cases, and sometimes it's injunctions, but sometimes we're winning. Even the Supreme Court, which is 3 people on that court he put in place, have come out and have been stopping him from doing some of the things. The other arena is what you and I have to do. It is legislative, procedural, in every way possible. It's one of the reasons why I stood for 25 hours to say, what can I do to do things in this body with the levers we have, even though we're in the minority, in the levers we have. But the other arena we have to fight for is what you have said over and over again, is the power of the public. Because the power of the people in a democracy is greater than the people in power. And it is what our founders got right when they broke with the formation of governments all throughout history. This is not going to be because we all pray the same. We're not a theocracy. It's not going to be divine right of kings and queens because people are being this idea that we surrender our rights to a monarchy. It's not even going to be the power of the sword where people, through military strength, oppress the people, autocracies. We are going to form a democracy. And the debates at the time, powerfully written in the Federalist Papers, the arguments were that we were not going to concentrate power in any individual, but we were going to have 3 branches, co-equal branches of government. And what you see from President Trump so far is his willingness to immediately try to attack the powers of the other 2 branches. One, by saying, I'm going to move through the complicity of other Republicans in the House and do things that are not going to be questioned. Your job as Article 1 branch of the government, Congress, is to provide oversight. There's going to be no hearings. Do not have a hearing about Elon Musk scraping data from people's personal data, their social security data, their tax data. Not one hearing about this unelected billionaire that's causing all this havoc. When we have scandals like Signalgate, not one hearing about whether this is the pattern and practice, which we're finding out that Hegseth is doing. We're going to eviscerate the power of the Article 1 branch to provide a check. And then, God forbid, if Article 3 branch is going to try to check my power, now I'm going to start threatening judges. Now I'm going to start saying things on my platforms that literally have had threats on judges increase over 100%. Literally, there's a judge in New Jersey who years ago, Judge Solis, years ago, she had someone come to her house trying to murder her and instead murders her son and shoots and wounds her husband. Her son's name was Daniel Anderall. And then what he does What's happening now through this whipping up of hate against people, judges, Republican-appointed judges, who are standing against the Trump administration, what's happening to now is now they are getting threatened as well. Literally, they're getting pizza sent to their private homes in the name of the murdered son of Judge Salas. That Daniel Anderol just sent you a pizza to show, as if to threaten them, we know where you live. And so we're creating a context where democracies erode, is when our norms and traditions begin to reduce and threats of violence rise. I've seen what they've done to some of my Senate colleagues, Republican colleagues, who had dared to even question, should we be confirming Hegseth, the most unqualified Secretary of Defense? Just by mentioning or questioning it, you're suddenly seeing them be dragged and threatened. And so what you see right now is the surrendering of power of checks and balances from the Article 1 branch of government. We are not doing oversight authority. We're not holding hearings. We're not allowing legislation that we've passed with the power of the pen, the power of the purse. That's being taken back by the executive with no accountability, no checks. And now they're attacking the Article 3 branch of government. This is a sign of autocracies, times of authoritarian leadership, not signs of democracies. This is the kind of things that are at stake right now. And the reason why we're asking people to come down here if you have the time, the day's gotten warm now, it's not as freezing as it was 6 o'clock in the morning when you and I were shaking trying to look tough. We're not shaking anymore. The sun is climbing to its apex. It's almost midday. We've been out here. We're in our 4th hour of sitting here. We're thankful. The joggers have come and sat with us. Just running through the plaza, they decided to stop and stay. I'm so grateful for the runners making me feel guilty. Run home at the end of this, whatever time we stop. There are a lot of people out here on the plaza stopping. You want to come down, come and join us in this conversation. Come and join us. We're grounding ourselves in who are we? That question, the moral underpinnings. I saw a man with a collar. Hello, sir. Father, how are you? Pastor, it's good to see you. What's your name? Rev, then come sit behind us, Rev. Rev, come on, sit behind us, because you're going to bring us back to the faith traditions. We're talking about the moral underpinnings of this country. The founders were all about public virtue. They pulled from the great philosophers of the day about what it takes to build a good society. That's what's under assault. But the biggest immediacy that's under assault, and we want people who are watching this and streaming to go into the DMs, sneak up into Hakeem's DMs, sneak up. It's okay today to sneak. It's for religious purposes only. Sneak up into Hakeem's DMs. Sneak up into my DMs if you'd like to, and tell us your story. Tell us what motivates you. What's urgency? What are you afraid of? I see these women with these beautiful babies. Thank you for being here. Come on up here and sit there. We need more cuteness with Hakeem and I here. We need more cuteness. Come on, sit right here in front of me. This is how politicians look good. Is put babies in the picture. But we want to hear from you today. We're going to sit here. We don't know how long we're going to sit here, but I imagine it's going to be as long as it's warm. The sun's going up, rising in the east, coming up above the Capitol. Come here. Hi. But this is about our democracy. But the most urgency thing, and I think the thing that Hakeem, that you and I talked about why we're sitting here, is the urgency of a 2-week break. Congress has been out and about. They've been holding town halls. They've been traveling the world. They've been going to El Salvador. We've seen heroic actions by Congress people all around. But now they're coming back. And the Republican leadership of this side of the Capitol, not the higher side. I think this is on an angle up there in the Senate, right? That's the higher side. What is the
Don't push me here. I'm from Brooklyn. Oh, there you go. Yeah. That was Grandmaster Flash. He's actually from the Bronx. But I think we face this moment, as Corey indicated, where we will come back into session tomorrow, and we'll be faced with an existential struggle to defeat a Republican effort to try to jam a very reckless budget down the throats of the American people, which is totally inconsistent with the approach that many of them spent all last year talking about, which was that they were going to try to drive down the high cost of living in the United States of America. They promised to lower costs. Costs aren't going down, they're going up. And we believe we have to build an affordable economy. That's what we should be working on. right? To make life better for everyday Americans, but instead we got a budget that's in front of us that is trying to enact the largest Medicaid cut in American history. Will hurt children, hurt families, hurt women, hurt seniors, hurt people with disabilities, close hospitals, close nursing homes. People will die if this budget is successful. That's how urgent the fight is. And we're going to stand on the side of the healthcare of the American people. And we need the American people to join us in this righteous struggle, because this budget is unacceptable, it's unconscionable, it's un-American, and we're going to do everything we need to bury it in the ground, never to rise again.
Yo, Brooklyn.
Oh, Brooklyn stole my Nets. I want them back in Norton.
Hey, you stole the WNBA from us for a while, so I just want to reinforce both what Senator Booker and what our leader Jeffries have said. But I want to tell you I want to say one thing about the attacks, because in addition to the attacks on ignoring Congress, on coming for the powers of the court, the attacks that we are seeing on the ability to organize people outside of government to have a voice, or to provide services to people outside of government. Nonprofit organizations are under attack by this administration. You say Doge, I say Vera Institute, which is doing public safety programs and supporting public safety programs in community, not only had their federal grants snatched, Doge showed up at their doors demanding their information unlawfully. A not-for-profit. They are not going to stop with Vera Institute. They are using and abusing the positions they are in to threaten the very people who are not even in government, just trying to help somebody. And that is what's happening. And the cuts, when we're talking about cuts, people bleed. And we should put names behind them. You know, Sarah in South Dakota had a son who has seizures 1 to 5 times a day. Had to quit her job to try to save her son. It is Medicaid that helps pay for her health care to do that. Or Jasmine in Alabama, in Tuscaloosa, with 2 kids, who was taking care of other people's children when she fell and became disabled, and it's Medicaid that was taking care of her. And by the way, farm country, when our leader says we can't let this hurt people, farmers are eligible for Medicaid. The people delivering our food are eligible. The same with hunger. We have farmers who are hungry, and they get food stamps. We have teachers, we have public servants, we have people who do all kinds of work. So this is who we're talking about, but it is the civil rights community as a pact, because they are trying to make us all fearful. They're trying to make judges afraid. They're trying to make legislators afraid. They're also trying to make us afraid. And we have signed not only a letter to the American public that says we will not be silent. You cannot threaten us into silence when it comes to people like Sarah or Jasmine or anybody else. But we also ask you to sign that pledge, because the only way they win is when they try to take our voice and our power. Go to civilrights.org and please sign the pledge. But when you are there at civilrights.org, you will see a link where you can send a message to your senator or your member of Congress saying, do not cut our health care. Do not cut food for the hungry. Do not take dollars out of our classrooms and away from our kids to put also say is we will not be silent. We will be at the National Press Club on Wednesday with Vera Institute, with Planned Parenthood, with representatives. They're even trying to threaten our funders. People have the power to decide they want to give us money. Our funders will be there, and universities and colleges, because they're trying to tell us we can't learn. They're trying to tell us our children can't stand up and have a voice if they don't want to be attacked. So all I am saying to you is we will not be silent. We have leaders who will not be silent. And we are all leaders. So we ask you, do not be silent. Use your voice because you have power.
Let's give it up for Maya Wiley.
And so we want you all to understand, and I know we've got, Pastor, come on down and sit next to me, please. We want everybody to understand that we started this with an understanding that it is a Sunday morning. It's the last day before Congress returns to session. They've been away for 2 weeks. And we wanted to have a different kind of conversation. We can't keep doing things like business as usual. We have to think of creative, new things to do. And so Akeem and I thought, let's sit on the steps of the Capitol, open up a live feed right before the sun rises, and begin a conversation. The first things we talked about were our faith traditions. This nation is undergirded by people who were imperfect like us all, but sought to create here on this soil a grand experiment. An experiment that has influenced the world over, as more and more people have looked towards our constitutional principles and tried to instill them. When Europe was being overcome with totalitarianism, what they began to look towards is the democratic ideals that were advanced by the United States of America. Our ideals have fundamental values. In fact, Pastor, this is where we're going to lead into you. It is this, the founders in that Declaration of Independence, these imperfect geniuses, they laid out this idea of our democracy, but then they said the thing to make it work, they ended the Declaration of Independence with a Declaration of Interdependence. The last words of the Declaration of Independence are all about the obligations we hold to one another, the urgencies that we see within one another, brothers and sisters, and it was almost like a command to every generation of what the standard should be in how we treat one another, how we work for one another, how we pledge each other to each other's well-being. They basically said after the Declaration of Independence, which they literally knew that signing that Declaration of Independence put their necks in a guillotine. They were breaking, they were rebellious, they were breaking with the course of human events and declaring independence from an authoritarian government at that time, England. And they said, in order to make this work, to thrive, to survive, as if a message to future generations, they said, we must mutually pledge to one another. We must mutually pledge our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor. That's what we owe each other. That's the kind of commitment it takes to make this experiment happen. We must mutually pledge our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor. We, today in America, how often are we living up to that idea of sacred honor? That word sacred speaks to something that is deeper, that is not material, that's not in a bank account. It is something deeper than that. Calling to this idea of sacred honor is calling to something spiritual. The Constitution is a piece of paper with ink. If it does not live, the spirit of the Constitution, the spirit of our founding ideals, do not live on our heart, they can't exist other places. And undergirding all of that was philosophy, was faith tradition, about what it takes to create a more beloved community. And so today we're talking about that. Hakeem and I wanted to sit here and talk about those traditions that undergird in the shadow of this building here, where they are going to be pushing in a matter of hours a bill that will cut food from the hungry, medicine from the sick, care for the elderly, support for the disabled. Is that pledging lives and fortunes and sacred honor? No. It is all to cut money out of that and give tax cuts that will disproportionately accrue to the wealthiest in America, who are the wealthiest in the world. That is a violation of the very words that were put onto the paper of our founders that mean nothing if they're not living in our hearts. So I love what Martin Luther did at a time where he saw the corruption of the church in violating its values. He walked up to the wall of the church and he pounded in a statement of honor, and he said, "Here I stand. I can do no other. So help me God." That put his neck in the noose. His defiance. We're not asking people to give their lives. We're not called to get on freedom rides knowing that our buses will be bombed. We're not called to march over the Edmund Pettus Bridge, a bridge named for an arch leader of the KKK. We're not called to storm beaches in Normandy or to stand in front of bullets for our nation. But in this moral moment, when people's health care is at stake, when people's lives are at stake, when the food for our children is at stake, the question is what will you do? And so I want you to introduce yourself, Pastor. I want you to speak to this moral moment. I want you to tell us your faith tradition, why it is so important as we learn from our faith, our shared faith, that faith without works is dead.
Thank you very much, Senator. Let's really applaud what he has just said. I'm Reverend Jimmy Hawkins. I'm with the Presbyterian Church, and I am the advocacy director for our Washington office right across the street.
Well, you guys caused some good trouble
Yes,
over in that building.
exactly. In the United Methodist building. And also for our Ministry of the United Nations. Also, I'm the tri-chair for the Washington Interfaith Religious Committee. So I'm here to talk about how this is a spiritual moment. And this has to be a spiritual movement that we are embarking upon. Because this budget, any budget that hurts people is against who we are as people of faith. Any budget that cuts food stamps, SNAP benefits, any budget that cuts health care, any budget that takes away from those who are the neediest in society, this has nothing to do with a faith movement. And one of the things that really hurts my heart is that many of the individuals who are supporting and endorsing this budget will say things like, well, I'm going to pray for you. You are my thoughts and prayers. And yet we'll vote for budgets that will injure those who need help the most. So I've got a few statements that I want to read. This proposed budget would impact the communities that I serve in the Presbyterian Church. While many of them are not directly impoverished, we have ministries in the church that feed hungry people. We endorse advocacy for health care benefits and to see that they are increased. And we also have food pantries like churches all around this country, and it's going to really challenge the resources that we have. But also, this budget does not reflect the needs of the nation. And currently, there are there are millions of people living in poverty in this nation. The federal poverty level for a family of four is only $32,000. Family of four. In what state, in what city can a family of four live in under $32,000? And for a single individual, $15,000.
When you say the poverty level, we have one of the highest child poverty levels of any developed nation. We were able to cut that in half under Biden for the 1 year when we expanded the child tax credit, but we were one vote shy for making it permanent. So what it basically has said is that child poverty is not an inevitable conclusion in our country, but a policy choice. Who are we giving tax breaks to? Struggling families that can get more back from their tax dollars, more back a refundable tax credit, or the billionaires? And the wealth of our country is not in the bank accounts of millionaires and billionaires. The wealth of any nation, especially in a global knowledge-based economy, is the genius and well-being of the children. Okay, go ahead,
Exactly. And mostly this budget does not reflect the heart of the American people, and especially people of faith. We do not want to see anyone hungry, especially a child, an elderly person, someone with disability, someone in need. There are charges of corruption that we're already putting too much money into these programs, but most of the recipients of benefits are not young, they're not healthy, they're not able to work. They're individuals who are mostly children, the elderly, persons with disabilities, and mental illness. They are struggling to meet the needs of their families, and many of them without reliable transportation or child care. As a minister of the gospel of Christ Jesus, I am called to be compassionate, caring, generous, and responsible, a steward of all that I own, and we're called to be responsible stewards of all that we own, recognizing that everything that we have comes from a generous God, and we are to be cheerful givers to those who are without. Jesus told a multitude of parables, charging those with wealth to be responsible and generous. The parable of the rich old fool and the rich man and Lazarus issue a warning to the wealthiest nation in the history of the world that the failure to utilize our resources on behalf of the poor is a sin against God. Matthew 25 has Jesus saying, I was hungry and you fed me. I was thirsty and you gave me something to drink. I was sick and you ministered unto me. I was a stranger and you welcomed me. This one statement addresses our current responses to hunger, health care, immigration, and poverty. If we are going to proclaim that America is the greatest nation in the world, then we must ask ourselves, by what standards? Are we great in compassion? Are we great in mercy? Are we great in generosity? Are we great in setting an example of what it means to be a democracy that allows everyone to have opportunity, a voice, and a vote? Or do we prefer to be the greatest in accumulating wealth held by the few and the greatest military with the capability of destroying the world several times over? Let us be great in our response to a God of love, a God who asks us the question, what does the Lord require of you? But to do justice, to love mercy, to walk humbly with your God. Let us be great in caring for children of this nation and around the world by generating budgets that meet the needs of those whose lives would improve with just a little bit of help. And they can go on and make contributions to the well-being of others. Let us be a spiritual nation that walks and talks by our faith, not just saying words of empty rhetoric, saying that we believe in God and we will pray for you, but by doing things in order to make real, as James said, that faith without works is dead.
Amen. Amen. Thank you so much. Thank you for being here. Thank you. We are now. We're going to stay in church this morning. We've had Muslim leaders, rabbis, but we're going to stay in church right now because one of the men who has been a true deep source, I think I can speak for Hakeem, and I'm going to pass the microphone to him to give the final introduction. But one of the men that has been such a source of strength to me, an inspiration of a moral light, in a North Star, as well as an anchor, keeping those in high positions, grounded and anchored with the people, is here with us right now. He is at the bottom of the steps, and we're going to walk this mic down. Is that the plan? I'm going to give it to you, and you're going to walk it down. But I want to let Hakeem say a word about Reverend Barber, and then we'll get the mic down to him.
Well, throughout the day, I think we're on hour 4 now.
Why you sound like that?
He had initiated Moral Mondays, and hopefully he'll talk to us a little bit about what Moral Mondays was all about down in North Carolina. But we're so thankful for his presence
And let's give it up for Reverend Barber.
Ain't pick on nothing. I'm sorry, I forgot I went live with y'all.
And I want to thank your staff for making provisions for those of us that have ADA issues. You know, because when you're kid, you got kid all the way around. And I want to thank you for that. I want to encourage y'all to come down a little bit closer to the ground so that folks at ADA, because some folks, even in this crowd, can't move up. And we need everybody on the field for this. And we need everybody's face and everybody's body. I was thinking yesterday, when I got this call from Jeffries about coming, and how in 2016 we did a national call for moral revival. In 2016. And in that 2016, we said then that, and I almost got arrested saying this in Kentucky, in the Kentucky State Legislature, when the extremists were controlling the governor's office. When they asked me why were we there, were you Republican, Democrat, we said no, some things are not Republican and Democrat, they're not liberal versus conservative, but they're right versus wrong. They're right versus wrong. And when I heard Senator Booker lift that the other day on the floor of the Senate, if we can get that right and get that clarity about why we're here, we may be elected in parties, but once we get elected, we have to have a principle bigger than even a party. Because actually in 2018, we found out we had 140 million poor and low-wage people in this country. 2018. And we've not raised the minimum wage in this country since 2009. 2009. So this is a moment. Moral moments don't just go out to any one group. What moral moments do, moral moments speak to those who are trying to go backwards. But moral moments also say to those that want to go forward, it's time to push harder and deeper and stronger. Moral moments cut both ways. The Bible says that my friend Jimmy Hawkins will quote the scripture that the word of God is like a double-edged sword. It cuts both ways. And I thought about the day, 98 years ago today, Coretta Scott King was born. Today, in Alabama. When she spoke on the other side of this building, at Solidarity Day, June 19th, 1968, her husband had been murdered, and yet she gathered the strength to do 3 speeches, one about Vietnam, and then she came to Solidarity Day when poor people and others came, over 50,000 of them. And Coretta Scott King first sung a song on that when she came. And you know what the song was? And I think all of the representatives and senators need to learn it. Go sing it on the floor of the Senate. Come by here, my Lord. Come by here. Come by here, my Lord. Come by here. Somebody needs you, Lord. Come by here. Oh, Lord. nonviolent. She called out because she recognized something was wrong. And then she said these words. I'm giving the son Jeffrey, they can say them to the folk in the Congress. She said, in this society, violence against poor people and minority groups is routine. I remind you that starving a child is violence. Suppressing a culture and taking people's history is violence. Neglecting school children and undermining their education, violence. Punishing a mother and her child, violence. Discrimination against a working man or woman and not making sure they have a wage that's out of pocket, violence. Ghetto housing, violence. Ignoring medical needs and health care, violence. A contempt for poverty as though poor people are somehow on a glorified vacation and not being affected by structural reality, violence. But listen to this last line. Even the lack of willpower to help humanity is a sick and sinister form of violence, especially when you have the power to make a difference. That's correct. So when we talk about this budget and what's going on today, we literally are talking about policy violence. 57 years ago, the night before he died, Dr. King said, nothing would be more tragic than for us to turn back now. And they were reaching into their faith when they were talking. Jesus said before he was crucified, he knew he was going to die. You better listen to people when they know they're going to die. But they get real truthful. And he said, I was hungry, and you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty. You gave me something to drink. Watch this. I was an immigrant. And you invited me in. I needed clothes, and you clothed me. I was sick, and you looked after me. He didn't say you took my health care. And he said, inasmuch as you do unto the least of these. And it's interesting, Senator Booker, if I might exegete, since we're in church, if I might exegete the text. He did not say that to individuals. He says, and the king will say to the nation. It does. See, we've taken this text and made it about individual piety. You know, a little food on Thanksgiving, a little food Christmas, feeding a few folk. That's all right, but that's not what Jesus was talking about. And that's not what got him killed. He said to the nations. And then Isaiah, way before him, said this in Isaiah 10. I wish a lot of the people that claim that they're all about religion would really read it. In Isaiah 10, it says, woe unto those who legislate evil and rob the poor of their rights and make women and children pray. Not P-R-A-Y, but P-R-E-Y. Which means if you pray at the opening session of the Senate or the House, but then after you pray P-R-A-Y, you pass a budget that prays P-R-E-Y-S on people that are vulnerable, then you just canceled out your P-R-A-Y. So, and then our Constitution says that we are to establish justice. I think what that means, I'm not a lawyer, I'm just guessing here, that the preamble of the Constitution in a sense says every policy we pass, it ought to be like a grid on top of it. And we ought to ask this question. Does this policy establish justice? Does it provide for the common defense? Does it promote the general welfare? Does it ensure domestic tranquility? And then later on, does it provide equal protection under law? And if the policy doesn't meet that standard, then it is constitutionally inconsistent, morally indefensible, and economically insane. And so when Trump and Musk and Johnson and them are signing unconstitutional executive order and illegally firing people and trying to pass this great big ugly bill. Great big ugly bill. Right, ugly bill. We have to speak up, and we have to speak up. I'm talking about for the family. In fact, not only do we need to speak up, we need to bring them here. We need to come here. We need to put a face on who we're talking about. The family that lives not too far from here, who watched agents of the government snatch their father and disappear him. sick people in South Africa who showed up one morning to get medicine and keep them alive, and they were told they couldn't receive them no more because USAID is gone. So that's what we're talking about. We're talking about the folk, even before all of this,
Awful,
800 people were dying a day from
awful.
poverty. 800 people, 295,000 people a year, already dying from poverty. 140 million people in poverty and low wage. Not just poverty, poverty and low wage. Now, what you're talking about there is 51% of all our children, 43% of the adults.
Remember,
you're talking about
remember
26
Fat Boy
million
across
black people,
from us,
66 million white people, 68% Latinos, so forth and so on. That was already happening.
Mira just called me.
They're already poor and hurting. We're talking
Their
about
sister
those
posted
people that this
I don't know if he out of jail,
would
if he got
only
out or what. He
exacerbate
died.
the suffering.
They just
This
posted.
one big
Why he was in jail? He
ugly
out.
I don't know.
Wow.
That's what I'm trying to figure
It's
out. 'Cause I know he was locked up.
Wow.
The younger sister just posted, so I know
because
he's probably going crazy.
policies are not benign.
Wow.
Now,
I don't know if
policies
he's
don't
still
kill you
locked up.
quick, but they kill you over time. That's why you
Wow.
can measure now how many people actually die from poverty, and there's all kinds of research on it, because over time, constant neglect is a form of violence and political abuse. So this budget says, this budget, if it was passed, what we research says that $800-some billion for Medicaid, that's 36 million Americans who will lose Medicaid. Policy violence. That's talking about somebody's mama, somebody's daddy, somebody's child. That's talking about rural hospitals. That's talking about people like me with disability. That's talking about people trying to make it. 15 million children that could go hungry because you're pulling back SNAP. You're talking about communities that are going to lose federal housing assistance. And we need to say it clear, and I'm going to ask Congress to do this. Make sure that when every time you mention these numbers, y'all got these good researchers up here, that you disaggregate it by race so that they don't think, we're not talking about black folk. Or brown or black, they're talking about majority white folk, and then in the South, sure enough, majority. And we're talking about places where if this assistance wasn't here, people, that's why there's such a rise now in the country, because people thought, oh, it's just going to hurt them. And that's why we cannot allow this budget to go untalked about. There are forces that would wish that this budget was untalked about, that nobody knew what was going on. They don't want you to target this. But we have to target this. We're talking about a foolish budget plan that aims to make laws across the whole government. We're talking about cutting departments. We're talking about empowering the ability to deport people by putting $86 billion more in the defense budget that the Pentagon doesn't even want, didn't even ask for. And what we have to say in this moment, say all of us. All of us, take your hands off our Medicaid, take your hands off our Medicare, take your hands off our voting rights, take your hands off our living wages, take your hands off our public education, and take your hands off of our lives and let us live. Because in this country, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness is supposed to be what not only is thought about, but policies allow it to actually happen. Actually happen. And we need to draw on this black, white, brown, Asian, native, gay, straight, whoever you are, young, old, rural, we have to say we're not going anywhere. We are America, and we're not going anywhere. And when you have lastly these greedy technocrats with a supremacy foundation who want to rule the country and believe in things like apocalyptic fascism and technocratic feudalism, you know, where you want to destroy something and then say, I told you it was going to fall apart. Well, you made it fall apart. That's what apocalyptic is. And they want to get it by quick, move it. We cannot allow that. We have to come by time. That's why tomorrow, in the nation's capital, well, actually this evening, we're doing a sermon right over at the Supreme Court. But tomorrow, hundreds and hundreds of clergy are coming, and so that we're coming in full vestments.
Yes.
And bringing impact to people. And we've done research. We've got a research, and we're going to give to every member of Congress showing the high moral stakes and negative reality of this budget. And we're going to talk about we're bringing impact to people, and we're coming in to deliver it. and we're coming to the rotunda, and we're coming in full vestments. The reason why we put on full vestments is because there's a story that says in South Africa one time, Bishop Tutu and some other clergy got together and they put on full vestments and went into a courtroom. And one of the courts told that one of the judges said, "Why are they here like that?" And the other one said, "I don't know, but I know apartheid is over now." And he said, "No, it's not. We're in power." He said, "Yeah, but the clergy have decided that this is a part of their ministry now. That means that they've decided that this is holy work, that this is not something they can choose not to do. So tomorrow, we're coming to say, this is something we cannot choose not to do. That we, every pulpit, we've been talking to over 9,000 clergy and growing across this country, that we have to have pulpits that are on fire and people of all different faiths that will come and say, in this moment, the only way a wannabe king gets to be king, or wannabe dictators, or wannabe people that want to just control everything get to do that is if we bow. And somebody has to come and say, our DNA won't let us bow.
Amen.
We bow only to God, we bow only to that which we see as ultimate reality, but we cannot and we will not bow. This is bigger than a party issue. This is an outright battle for civilization itself. It is an outright battle for democracy itself, and we must declare that we will not bow. And every now and then you need to look at a neighbor and say, "Neighbor, I just can't do it.
Neighbor,
I just can't bow. I cannot bow,
I don't bow
when I see
nobody.
people hurting sick people. I cannot
Because
bow
I go
when
to
I
church
see
and
people
bow
taking
to the
people's
preacher.
wages. I cannot
When I
bow
be
when I see people
taking
who are to
a
be lifted up being
Christian
torn
cookie
down.
weekend.
I cannot bow when I see billionaires wanting to hurt the poor. I cannot bow when people in this building raise their salaries but keep everybody else's salary at poverty wages. I can't bow. I can't bow. I just can't. It may not change right now. I may not have the vote, but I can't bow. Moral dissent means you have to have a moral dissent until such time as you have the political power. But the moral thing. And so maybe it's time to stand tall. And maybe it's time to mobilize our rights. No, not maybe. It is time.
Yes.
Yes.
It's time, I think, to have mass pray-ins. It's time, when election comes, to have a labor strike day so that everybody on the election can surely go and vote. It's time to mobilize the biggest potential voting bloc in this country, which is poor, low-wage, infrequent voting. There's over 30 million of them, and there's not a state in this country, that poor people don't make up at least 30% of the electorate, and in so-called battleground states, over 43% of the electorate. And the number one reason they don't vote is they say nobody talks to us anymore. Nobody. Well, we have to stop that. We have to talk to them. Celinda Lake has said that is the place in most of the battleground states. If you just registered 10%, well, no, you don't even have to register because many of them are already registered. If just 10% of poor and low-wage people were mobilized around an agenda, not even around a party, around an agenda, they could fundamentally shift. And we can no longer have people say, well, these infrequent voters, we don't have time to mobilize them. If you don't have time to mobilize them, you don't have time to save this democracy. Because God makes it so. Every now and then, Congress, you never heard anything else this old country preacher said. Every now and then, God makes it so the stones that the builders rejected are the only ones that can build a new society. Psalm 118 says, the stones that the builders rejected have now become the chief cornerstone. And so that means that all the rejected folk, the sick folk, the handicapped folk, the poor folk, from Mississippi to Montana, from New York to Nevada, from California to the Carolinas, that is the hope of this nation. If we mobilize the poor and low wages, and then they connect with people of conscience, people of wealth with conscience, and others, that is the power. The stones that the builders have rejected. Any of y'all know what it's like to be rejected? Yes. How about reject because of who you love? Raise your hand. Rejected because of where you come from. You know some folks have been rejected. Raise your hand. Because of denial of health care. Or rejected because of their poverty. If all the rejected folk come together The scriptures say that they produce a power. And this is what it says, finally. When they come together and they shift the foundations of society, this is the last part of that verse. This is the day that the Lord has made. Amen. When we all get together and lift every time, when we all get together and make sure the sick are taken care of, when we all get together and make sure people are paid a decent and a living and a loving wage, when we all get together and stop the injustice and push for justice, when we all get together, this is the day that the Lord has made.
Amen.
Hallelujah.
Hallelujah.
Amen.
We're not sitting in the congregation right now, but Reverend Barber just took us to church. Let's give it up for Reverend Barber. Moral, principled, powerful, prophetic leadership.
All right, we're going back to our seats. Anybody can come up to the steps, join us.
You are amazing, Chris. You are amazing. You are amazing. You are amazing. Honey?
What's that? Yes. Oh, yeah, yeah.
Citizens sitting out. I love that.
Senator. Oh, thank you very much.
Of course. You got Medicaid. You don't know what's real.
I don't. We gotta get back to a program. Unfortunately, we got the next speaker here. Okay. So forgive me. All right, people, we're getting back to the steps. We thank Reverend Barber. One more round of applause for the Reverend. And I'm going to let Leader Jeffries help you sit down. I'm just going to remind people why we are here. Senator Jeffries and I, Congressman Jeffries, Leader Jeffries and I started we're reeling in our 5th hour here. We sat down here before the sun came up. And we said we're going to do an old-fashioned sit-in on a Sunday and talk about the moral underpinnings of our nation, the values that bring us together, that hold us together. We're going to harken back to the people that the founders drew on to do this great experiment, the commitments we have to one another, the arc of the moral universe that this nation, every generation has grabbed hold of it and bent it more towards justice, liberty and justice for all, that ideal. And how that after 2 weeks on recess, Congress comes back tomorrow. And when they get back to this House, Republican leadership has said they're going to be pushing this bill that cuts billions and billions, if not hundreds of billions of dollars from services and support to Americans in order to give tax cuts to the wealthiest Americans. As Leader Jeffries said, renewing these tax cuts from the Trump years, over 80% accrue to the top 1%. And what they're doing in the shadow of the moral might of America and our religious traditions is that they're cutting food from the hungry, health care from the sick, support services for the elderly, resources for the disabled, and so much more. From Meals on Wheels to public education under assault, under attack. And the question is not what they are trying to do. The question is, who are we as a people? Will we sit idly by, or will we rise up, speak up, stand up, and with our nonviolent heart and creative action, can we take this moral moment and ensure that we protect our fellow Americans? That is where we are. And Leader Jeffries and I said we would come out here and sit for a good long time. As I said, we're rolling into our 5th hour soon. And invite people to join us physically. If you're watching online, this plaza is beginning to fill up. We have more and more people sitting down. God bless American University. You all are stalwarts. You were here in the cold hours. You were here when it was chilly. Now it's warm and easy. Come on out. But we're also asking people who are watching online to DM us messages from you. Our team is going to collect them all. We're going to start reading some of them. Maya who was out here was reading the names of people, speaking people's names, speaking to the experience of Americans who are struggling right now and face real challenge. And so we're inviting different speakers to come out. On my left is another senator. We're keeping count. There might be a little bit of a rivalry between the House and the Senate. I think the score right now is senators outnumbering House members, and there's only 100 of us. But maybe you can do your rebuttal. You can reclaim your time, and then introduce our guest.
Let's be clear, we're on the House side of the Capitol right now. This is the people's house. Now, Reverend Barber mentioned that this is a time for us to put principles over party. Principles over party. It reminded me, I think that's a powerful moment for us. Reminds me of a letter that Ulysses Grant was said to have sent at the start of the Civil War. Of course, the great general who subsequently became president. And at that moment of great turmoil in the country literally tearing itself apart, Grant wrote that whatever my prior political positions have been, my prior opinions have been up until this point, I have but only one objective now. And Grant then said, we have a government and laws and a flag, and they must all be sustained. Government, laws, and a flag, and they must all be sustained. And then he said something even deeper than that, because at that time in American history, there were multiple parties. We're in a two-party system right now, but there were multiple parties. And what Grant said is, there are but two parties in America right now, patriots and traitors. And at this moment, when Reverend Barber talked about the need for us to put principle over party, we're calling upon our Republican colleagues as we approach this budget to put the American people first, to center the American people. And the principle of making life better for everybody. Whether you're a Democrat or Republican, this is an American moment, and we need the American people to show up and stand up and speak up and partner with us. And we're going to get through this moment. We're going to end this national nightmare. And we're going to make sure America can become the best version of herself. That's what all of you represent. And so we've been joined by a great advocate, a great leader, someone who actually does trace her roots to the House of Representatives in terms of her career. So we put that on the house tag for her.
I got it.
Minnie Timaraju has been a long-time champion for reproductive freedom. Thankful that she's joined us here with her two children, who I think she'll introduce. But right now she is the president of Reproductive Freedom for All, a great champion, a powerful voice, and an American leader. Thank you, Minnie, for joining us.
He thought about it. He thought about giving a speech. This is my thank you, Senator Thomas. It's great to see you. Thank you, Senator Booker. Can I keep going? Oh, okay, thank you. This is Krishna, and this is Satya, and they are my twin boys. And they wanted to come to the Capitol today. Krishna, I'm gonna ask you to let me finish.
Yeah,
You're gonna let me finish. Thanks, babe. I wanted them to come to the Capitol today because I wanted to talk about Medicaid. And one of the things that's the most shocking, and I think you've been talking about already today, about the proposed cuts to this budget, which frankly could only be found in Medicaid, but there's no way to do what they're talking about doing without gutting Medicaid, would have a dramatic impact on our nation's kids, disturbingly so. And I think there's an untold story about Medicaid and how important it is for reproductive freedom. I was just in Arizona with your colleague, Ruben Gallego, and we did a Medicaid town hall. in a congressional district that I think we have some interest in. And we were talking to a lot of moms who, because they have Medicaid coverage, and Medicaid covers almost 50% of births in Arizona, 50%, and now has recently been expanded to cover postpartum. They've had a dramatic decrease in maternal mortality rates in Arizona because of Medicaid. I think it's so important. We have a maternal health crisis for Black and brown moms, right? So it's so critical that we protect this program. The other thing I wanted to say about Medicaid is how many family planning services are covered by Medicaid across the country. So STI testing, birth control, cancer screenings, cancer treatments. And when you think about losses and cuts to Medicaid, I want you to think about two things. I want you to think about clinics in your community. I want you to think about Planned Parenthood. We know the extreme right's been going after Planned Parenthood, trying to shut down Planned Parenthood. We know Donald Trump knows how deeply unpopular that is. But they can do it through Medicaid. They can shut down the nation's safety net family planning programs, including your Planned Parenthood clinic, the most trusted provider of care in this country. Most Americans got their first health care out of Planned Parenthood. They can shut it down through these Medicaid cuts. And when they shut down these clinics, even if you never had to have Medicaid, you might need it one day, and even if you didn't have to have it, the impact it's going to have on the critical care infrastructure your state would need, you don't have care anymore. So that's what we've been running around the country talking about with a lot of your colleagues, and we're going to keep fighting.
Talk about why we are confident that this what they have referred to the Energy and Commerce Committee creates the conclusion, not from us as Democrats, but from the Congressional Budget Office. I want you to discuss that, but I just want to say that what you're spelling out here is that so many of the providers, the frontline providers of care in America, are providing services at margins that don't exist.
That's right.
That if the reimbursement rates do not cover the services that people are now providing, and so people like Planned Parenthood and others often have to rely on donations just to fill the gap. And so if you cut Medicaid, forget what Leader Jeffries is going to describe to the extent that they're talking about cutting, but a 5 or 10% cut endangers health care for millions of Americans. But even worse than that is a lot of the hospitals in the most remote areas, in our rural counties, already operate at a serious deficit. That they will face closures. From rural areas in New Jersey, all throughout the Midwest, we are already hearing stories of what this will mean, because to pull out one of the financial rebars of what hospitals use to sustain the architecture of their total services. So even if you don't rely on Medicaid, you can still be affected by those cuts, by the very hospital you rely on. And remember, this comes in the wake of a president who is taking away Social Security offices. This relies on a president who is attacking veterans' care and veterans' services. We are seeing them taking away the kind of services we rely on, and the question we ask again is why? Why are you doing this? Why? Well, we know why. Because they want to give greater tax cuts that will overwhelmingly accrue to the wealthiest Americans. How do we know? It's because that is the 2017 tax cuts that they are trying to renew and even add on top of. They gave tax cuts to the wealthiest corporations who have seen historic profits even before those tax cuts, and to the wealthiest Americans who for the last quarter century have seen a growth in wealth that has been stratospheric. Cutting services to hundreds of millions of Americans while giving the wealthiest 1% tax cuts is immoral. And that's again why we're sitting here on the Sunday before this work period saying we're just going to sit down, open up a live feed, and have a moral discussion. And I'm going to hand it over to my partner in this,
Thank you, Reverend Booker. Well, we're so thankful for all of you, the American people, who come out at a critical momentarily who's joined us, but we're on the cusp of entering into an intense period where we're working hard to stop this reckless Republican budget. It only takes 4 Republicans on the House side and 4 Republicans on the Senate side to join us. And we can stop this reckless effort to enact the largest Medicaid cut in American history. Now, as Corey indicated, despite what they've tried to say up until this point, and they're going to try to deceive the American people, I think maybe in early to mid-February, after they had already frozen Medicaid disbursements across the country. Actually, this was the January Office of Management and Budget unconstitutional freeze. It froze it. American people rose up. We were able to fight to get that rescinded. And then what happened is Trump goes into the Oval Office and he has the nerve to say that we're going to love and cherish Medicaid. They are going to destroy and undermine Medicaid. That's the truth. Now they're claiming, to be the last point, we'll go to the next speaker, they're claiming that this is all about waste, fraud, and abuse. Now we believe that government can of course be more efficient, nonprofits can be more efficient, the private sector can be more efficient. We're all about trying to make sure we have the most efficient and effective government, the use of your taxpayer dollars as possible. But we know their excuse is phony because they, for instance, have spent time, Elon Musk, has spent time targeting allegedly waste, fraud, and abuse in Social Security, your earned benefit. The average Social Security recipient lives on $65 a day. Elon Musk right now has contracts with the federal government that make about $8 million a day. If you want to go after waste, fraud, and abuse, start right there. Taking your money and your health care so they can enact massive tax cuts for their billionaire donors. Let's thank Minnie. Thank you, Minnie.
Thanks, guys. Thank you guys for your patience. I promised some ice cream after this, so we're gonna go. Can I finish? Yes, I can. It's gonna be really short. So in the wake of the Dobbs decision, I just wanted to connect the dots for so many folks, right? You were in the streets, you were marching. You know, our leaders here have been incredible champions for fixing this crisis. 21 states with abortion bans and restrictions. 21 states where women can barely get access to care. And then we're going to compound the crisis with these cuts. So I want you to put it in context that we are already in a massive crisis for reproductive health and freedom in this country. Yes. And I know Ruth's going to speak in a minute about how it's impacting moms, but it's all connected. We can't be a nation where we've taken away people's fundamental freedoms and bodily autonomy and we're forcing birth, and then we're going to deny them prenatal and postpartum care, and we're going to be sentencing women to die, and we're sentencing children who are sick to lives without their parents. So thank you all for being here. I'm so grateful for your leadership. I'm so grateful.
I'm happy they got a chance to see that, and I'm happy that they stole all the handsomeness for themselves, left Hakeem and I with none of it! Oh my gosh. Thank you guys so much. All right, as Ruth Martin is going to send herself when Minnie leaves, I want to let him, I'm going to ask him to stay for a little longer, but I want to say right over my shoulder, a man with greater seniority, that's why he's sitting on the higher step. He's holding it down on the northern side of the Capitol, is Senator Brian Schatz from the great state of Hawaii. Brian is a man of great humility and a man of deep conviction. He is a moral man, and I'm grateful he's here. We're going to hear from Moms Rising real quick. Not real quick, take your time. Hakeem and I didn't put a back end on this. We are going to stay here. That's why we hope more people will come. The sun is climbing. We're almost at our 5th hour. We're going to stay as speakers come, and we hope that more of our colleagues will join us. But I just want to say real quick before Moms Rising speaks, Ruth, as a way of introduction to you. I just want you to know I saw something myself in the power of women organizing. It is what sustains my city in Newark. We have so many women who don't think of motherhood as biology, but think of it as a spiritual bond. Most every community in Newark has somebody that they call mom as an honorific title because they love so strong, they love so mighty. The woman that is one of the most influential in my life is a woman named Miss Virginia Morton. Miss Virginia Jones. Mom Morton was another great mother in my community. Miss Virginia Jones was a tenant president of some high-rise projects called Brick Towers. And she showed me the power of organizing, the power of strength. And what folks know this is often when public like this, you see our public faces but not our private pain. Everybody on these steps I know has grief or hurt or worry or fear or trauma in their lives. And Miss Jones, I didn't know it as I got to know this woman we call the mother of our city. I didn't know until later that her son was murdered in the building, one of the 2 buildings in the 1980s. And it shook me because she remained tenant president of those buildings. She never left. She held that community together with the ferocity of her love. She was a mighty, mighty great leader. But I asked her one day, I said, why do you still live here? I know where you work. I know you could move to another neighborhood. Why didn't you ever leave? And she goes, Corey, why am I still in these buildings? I said, yes, Miss Jones. She goes, why am I still in apartment 5A? I go, yes, Miss Jones, why? She looks at me and she goes, why am I still the tenant president since these buildings were built in 1969? I go, that's electoral longevity. Yeah, why? And she looked at me and she goes, because I am in charge of Homeland Security. And then she smiled and I smiled. She didn't need a cabinet position. She didn't need a title. She didn't need a high position and a salary. She was the mother of that community because she knew where power really comes from. It comes from the courage to stand and the strength to love. And so you have an organization that represents mothers like that who are not content to stay on the sidelines or to stay in the stands. They know that democracy is not a spectator sport. It is a full court participatory endeavor. And I just want to thank you for being with us today.
Thank you so much. Moms are pretty amazing, yeah? They're pretty good. They're very strong. We want to thank you, moms across the country. Moms Rising has over 1 million members across the country. And many of them are watching right now and are excited to see both of you have been championing what our families really need. We're sitting down, standing up, sitting down, on the floor. It's story time. It's actually what I brought a couple of storybooks from our members who have taken the time to share their experiences and what this horrible budget could do to our families. How we need more people like you all to put families over billionaires. So, as Minnie was saying before, just moments before, it's just incredibly important to our families. All of these cuts that are on the table are going to decimate our families. They're trying to undermine our public education, take away our access to health care. It's just SNAP benefits, all these things that we need to make sure that our families are thriving are in jeopardy. Why? For the sake of billionaires? It just doesn't make any sense. Make it make sense, right? It's just awful. So, really happy to be here today representing Moms Rising members. And I brought my daughter, Beatrix, to be here with me too, because while she can't yet vote, we've got a couple more years before that happens. Obviously, everything that happens here has an impact on her future. And Minnie's kids and kids I see down here and all of our kids. So, we're happy to be here. And these stories from our members are pretty heartbreaking. And I know you guys have been here for 5 hours now. Yeah? All right, I will. I'm going to read you Amber's story from Ohio. Streetsboro, Ohio. Amber said, I go to school to afford a child on my own. As of now, we barely survive. With SNAP and Medicaid and the current wages most days I don't eat the meals I cook so that my child can have leftovers the next day. I have faced homelessness for 8 months now, waiting for a home on the Section 8 list. I have relied on federal programs and churches to get me through this far. Those programs do not exist. I would have been homeless for a year waiting for Section 8. I have no family to fall back on. It's me and my daughter alone. If they cut SNAP and Medicaid and other federal programs, it would guarantee not only not me being able to feed myself, but I won't be able to feed my child either. I can only work part-time while going to school full-time and being a full-time mom with no help from her father. To take on an already struggling family, to take from an already struggling family to give to a millionaire and billionaires and corporations is absolutely absurd and will very much hurt families like mine. Oh, another one. Okay, great. This one is from Melissa in Pennsylvania. Cost of living is high while unemployment wages have been stagnant. Healthcare premiums take a big chunk of that wage. I have 2 adult children with autism who still live at home. Rent is incredibly expensive. My daughter would rather save her money to buy a house than waste it on rent. She's also paying her college loan and healthcare premiums in the exchange. My son with autism receives a partial SSI payment, Medicaid, and SNAP. Without it, that would be much more difficult for us to afford groceries for a family of 4. I stopped working full-time so I could spend more time helping my son become more independent and emotionally stable. I can't trade the benefits of the family since my husband works in his family's small business. COVID ended my long-term job of 22 years, and since then we have to purchase insurance through the Pennsylvania marketplace. Although I am grateful it's available to us, even the lowest premiums with a premium tax credit are almost $900 a month. I was diagnosed with breast cancer last year. Biopsy, surgery, and radiation therapy cured me, but I ended up owing the hospital over $13,000. I pay them more per month than I pay for my car. They have threatened to send us to collections if we don't pay the full amount. My husband does not want to risk our credit rating. I have to make these payments for 2 more years. We have a middle-income family, and we have worked hard, and we have paid our taxes our entire adult lives and may have to work until we die because of decisions made by this administration.
Thank you so much for your leadership and for presenting these stories, and it's going to be important for us to continue to lift up and elevate stories. We've been spending a lot of time on the Capitol steps talking about Medicaid, but Medicaid is not the only thing that is under threat, and you've done a great job in documenting that reality. In addition to the proposed efforts to try to cut health care from the American people, what they're trying to do in this budget is to cut potentially supplemental nutritional assistance by as much as $230 billion. That literally will take food out of the mouths of babies, families, children, veterans, and seniors. And had a lot of folks share their stories. I'll read one. This is Kat Cottonwood from Arizona. I received SNAP benefits. I had to reapply recently because I stopped receiving alimony, and I don't earn enough to make ends meet in the rural area where I live. I have a daughter in college. My daughter comes home, there is no adjustment for the added grocery bill. It will be home almost 4 months this summer, but I receive no additional benefits now that they're trying to cut. I receive no additional benefits because she lives in another state most of the year. And then she makes a profound observation: college students eat a lot. But at the end of the day, the effort literally to cut nutritional assistance is a moral outrage. And we're here sitting down on the Capitol steps urging the American people to stand up, and together we will stop this from happening.
Please stay, because I know we're now running behind because we have some speakers lining up, but the stories you have in here are so important, and everybody's not going to be able to get this. I want to read one more from a state that unfortunately sits in the shadow of New Jersey. It's called New York, if anybody hasn't heard of it. I'm sorry, we got some sibling rivalry here. But this is from Bethany, from Jackson Heights, New York. And again, the reason why I want to read this is what you said. It's like there's an irony that we are talking about Medicaid, but there's so many other things that are being cut. Support for children with disabilities. But the absurdity that this letter points out, and you'll hear her in her own voice, but this is the absurdity in our nation right now. We have a president and Elon Musk and others talk about, we want to have more babies. We want to see more babies being born. But they have no intention of supporting moms who struggle in America, struggle in areas that other countries, their mothers don't worry about. The cost of childcare in America is more expensive in about half of our states than tuition at a college. The stress that a mother is put under financially is outrageous, and this woman is going to talk about it. Bethany writes, with my first child, I had to go back to work starting at 6 weeks because we don't have adequate paid family leave or maternal leave in this country. With my first child, I had to go back to work starting at 6 weeks. She was born with a birth defect and required extra, more specialized care, and none of the daycares could provide that level of support. But beyond that, none of the daycares would even take 6-week-old children. We couldn't afford a full-time nanny. I'm a preschool teacher, so we hired a nanny for part-time while my mom came down to the city a few days a week to help care for the baby. This lasted until she was able to attend preschool where I teach. I just recently had another baby, while my husband and I were not allowed to have 12 weeks leave, thanks NYS. Finding a nearby daycare that we could both afford and had openings proved to be almost impossible again. This whole process is insane. We are on multiple wait lists and still have not received any spots. We are lucky in many respects because my work hours are short and my husband works from home, so we are able to get by with another part-time nanny share situation for now. But it also means we are spending a huge chunk of our income on childcare. The system is totally broken. What we should be doing is not cutting programs to support mothers, but investing more, because there's no better return on investment than investing in mothers and children in America. We want to say thank you very much for being, thank you so much, and we're grateful. And please, I hope there's a lot of moms watching this. Continue to tune in, share the link, share your stories. We're going to be recording them, go into DMs, but thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
All right, I know we have, Brian Schatz is still here. You okay to wait for a little while? You're okay to wait. So we are now going to bring up Lindsay Latham. Oh, we're going to go down to Lindsay. Everybody else stay put. We're going to weave down to Lindsay. And she is a parent advocate. Her husband, Toby, her son, Calvin, is here. And daughter, Lucy, I see you, Lucy. Lucy, I'm coming.
I know I recorded a long time. I'm on live. I've been on live since 9 o'clock.
Thank you so much for having us. I'm Lindsay Latham, and this is. Do you
I just want to keep on having
on your talker?
different videos.
No? Okay. This is Calvin.
Couple
age 11.
Live parts.
No? And Lucy,
I just let
age
keep on
6.
going.
Sir, Dad.
Y'all can see this on YouTube.
So our journey
They on YouTube.
has started about 10 years ago when Calvin was about 1 year
I'm about to put you in your room so you can calm down.
He was diagnosed with a rare brain malformation called
Ready back.
polymicrogyria.
You go in your room
because insurance
you're doing too much.
we went down the road of learning about the Medicaid waiver. We're in the state of Virginia, and currently in the state of Virginia,
Room time.
I'm sorry, you're right. Thank you, Calvin.
Yes, room.
Currently in the state of Virginia, there are two types of waivers. So he's eligible for Medicaid based on his disability.
Yes, you did.
And he also receives attendant care. So on top of actually getting additional medical services, he receives attendants who come to our home and assist with bathing, feeding, drinking, toileting. He is weak on his right side, so he requires a lot of assistance, day-to-day assistance, hands-on assistance, and we were here in 2017 when they wanted to roll back the ACA, and we're here now because we are facing this existential crisis to not only people with disabilities, but families and women and children, and it is unconscionable to think that we are back here fighting for people to have the ability to live their lives and live their lives in a healthy manner. To get Calvin ready for his day, he requires anti-seizure medicines. He takes four in the morning and 4 at night, including drooling medication. And Calvin has 3 insurances. His third insurance is Medicaid. If we didn't have Medicaid, we would have out-of-pocket expenses for all 4 of his medications on a monthly basis, hundreds of dollars a month. Both my husband and I work full-time. We have good jobs. We worked really hard to get where we are, and we would be devastated. Our family would be bankrupt if we lost Medicaid.
Some of the things that Medicaid paid for just to get here this morning, after taking the morning medications, Calvin has to get in the car seat that he has specially made for him, went through both private insurance companies, which denied it because it wasn't medically necessary. And do you know who picked it up? Medicaid. And then that chair that he uses as a mobility aid for when he's fatigued, not medically necessary by his private insurance companies. You know who picked it up? Medicaid. His talker, that's $6,500 off the shelf. 2 private insurance companies said it's not medically necessary for a kid who can't communicate without it. You know who picked it up? Medicaid. So to say that Medicaid isn't going to affect families, they're not luxury items. They're not for Calvin. They're what he needs in the classroom. We want pictures of him this year. We're also advocates in the special education space where there's going to be cuts and impacts based on what this administration is doing. Absolutely. So Calvin and Lucy, Lindsay, all of us, this is a picture of Calvin this year. It was 2 years ago. We were in this tough discussion with the school district about moving him exclusively to a classroom for kids with intellectual disabilities because he could not communicate what he was learning. But we knew that he was picking up subject matter in the classroom. He had quote-unquote behaviors. They also wanted to move him out of the gen ed classroom because of the behaviors. But we were confident that he was exhibiting the behaviors that communicate what he was learning in the classroom like his peers were. So we pushed for the support for him to stay in his gen ed classroom. And that's him acing his first test in his gen ed class, subject matter class, because he got the supports that he needed to use that system of communication to tell his teachers what he was learning. There's a gap in the funding. We talk about year after year when the IDEA and its process Congress promises 40%. We're not coming asking for 40%, and it's currently at 13%. But there's also resources that people don't know about or don't think about when they talk about that, which is the research and the best practices. Parents can go to and go back to our school systems and say, hey, there's this research backing classrooms of communication, effective communication regulations, which allow us as advocates to go back to our school systems and say,
Chuck, who is it?
Mode of communication.
Right there, you got me on my coffee fucking zone. You need to get your fucking key.
You do this effectively.
God damn it. Wait, now you gotta sit there and wait.
So you do this well. just said he heard a fire engine.
Try your goddamn key.
So the department has cuts in staffing and research and supports. In addition to the Medicaid, it's a whole holistic system of supports that you get from the federal government that people do.
It's open.
Yeah, one of the reasons that we wanted to be here on Capitol steps was to give the American people an opportunity to tell their stories. Because a budget is just not cold numbers on a piece of paper. It represents our values, and it has deep implications for the American people.
Come on, little brat. You go in your room. I'm tired. You
children. It will hurt families. It will hurt veterans. And so we want to thank you for elevating.
Beautiful cursing, y'all.
Stories. Thank you for your resilience. Thank you for your presence. Some of my colleagues who serve in this Capitol talk a lot about family values. But that's rhetoric. That's rhetoric if at the same time you're talking about family values, you're undermining American families, and we're not going to stand for it. We're not going to stand for it. So we really appreciate your presence. I don't know if you have any concluding words.
I would just say that all of this is intersectional. We have funding from Medicaid that goes to the schools across this country that help occupational therapists, speech therapists, physical therapists. That doesn't only affect kids with severe disabilities.
Well, you gotta sit someplace else. You gotta
that
put
affects
somewhere.
everyday kids.
I can't hardly walk.
There might be interventions that are required.
Come on, crazy cat.
Our paraprofessionals, some of them are paid through Medicaid, and it is incredibly important to understand the intersectionality between our schools and our community-based services. The idea that HHS is cutting the budget for people to live in their communities and have supports. The disability community has fought for decades to be in their community, to live in their community. And it has only been 30 years since Olmsted. Not even 30 years since Olmsted. So you're seeing more people in your community.
Yeah.
Olmsted is a Supreme Court decision.
I'm about to go. It's a bit long. Been recording for.
So going back even further.
Okay, how long?
Since 1975, the kids have been required.
Go look at them on YouTube. They talk about what's going on with Trump.
All of these laws on the books
And they're sitting on the Capitol steps.
have gotten people with disabilities.
A whole lot of people showing up.
Seeing them more often, and people are
Let's just be safe.
But Olmsted was a decision in
Let's be safe, safe, safe. It was upside down.
Under the ADA, folks have rights to have their services provided in the community. Pains that go along with it, but we all, as a community,
see y'all later. You have a safe week.
Calvin, because that's why we advocate the way we do. I'm an introvert. I don't